Morning, everybody. We made it to a Saturday again. Good morning, everybody. Peter Boyles on the air everywhere. December the 14th, 2024, Radio Free Denver, good old 710 KNUS. The weather's beauty, sunny and 55. My motorcycle is outside. 54 on Sunday and Monday, 49 degrees. Much to talk about this morning. We have a half an hour quickly, and I do want to have people talk about drones. My daughter and I drone watched last night and saw them. Actually saw drones last night, saw about 5 or 6 of them. So I want you to give me your input on that. And then Hannah Parker McCabe's on, human rights advocate. I do want to talk about what's taking place with these powerful men and human trafficking with these young girls. Then Tim Furnish is on and Sam Zakhem is on. We're going to talk about the Assad family and what's taking place in Syria. The Israelis have now struck Syria 480 times and seizing territory as Netanyahu pledges to change the face of the Middle East. And then we've had these really great follow-up shows. Started out with a book called Elvis and the Colonel, and it rolled into the role of the Denver PD and everything that happened here with Elvis in Denver. And last week we had Ron Pietrafeso on, and the email success for that was incredible. And his brother Bob. And so I had a lunch this week that was out of this world. I got invited to a very late lunch, bunch of retired Denver PD, including former chief. And it's really looking forward to it. Zavaris, and he's agreed to come in and do a show. But Ron and Bob Pietrafeso will both be here with us this morning on 710 KNUS. So let's begin. 303-696-1971. We got about a half an hour to blaze through this. The drones. You almost have to do the drones. I saw them last night. My daughter's been drone watching for quite a while and didn't tell me much about it. So we're in a situation where she knows where the drones are flying from and she can see them. So we started watching, killed all the lights in the house. It's serious. Opened the windows, not opened the windows, but, pulled the shades up and you could see drones. There's no question you can see drones. Who are they? What are they? What are they doing? I've listened to enough talk radio to know there is a lot of what the term used to be balderdash. I personally believe that there is some young, very bright, probably semi-wealthy young men and women who are running these things. I'm looking over at Adam nodding his head. What are the drones? We got a little bit of time, and I do think I want to get it in here. 303-696-1971. Do the drones have any meaning, or are they just like the next gimmick? And is it much ado, as Shakespeare said, much ado about nothing when I see Democratic Congress people in New Jersey accusing the government, or you see Republican Congress people attacking Joe Biden for these drones? Did the drones scare you? Did they throw you off? It's like, to me, it's like, wow, look at that. There's a drone, and some of them just sit there and some of them move around and you can see them. They're out there. But how many people do you think are back there, buzzing with drones, just having themselves a good old time? Now, I saw a video. It was in New Jersey. Some guy's cutting loose, and you can watch his tracer rounds bend as he's shooting the drones. So wait a minute, now you're shooting the drones, and I love the acclaim of, well, the government knows nothing about these drones. Well, of course. I mean, and then everybody talks about the Chinese balloons, and it all gets all tied together. So we have just a short amount of time to do this. I'd love to get your thoughts. 303-696-1971. And then we will go to some serious talk radio with Hannah Parker McCabe and Tim Furnish, Sam Zakhem, and then 2 wonderful hours with the Pietrafeso brothers, Ron and Bob Pietrafeso. So 303-696-1971. It is your turn. I did see drones last night. My daughter and I, she kills the lights, and she's done this before, and we sit and we watch drones, and you can see them. I mean, there's no question they're flying out over, the Highland Canal. They're cutting back across Colorado Boulevard. They're drones. Some of them just sit there. Some of them move quickly. But my personal belief, as if it matters, is there's a bunch of, we used to call them geeks, and they're just having themselves the time of their lives, and they're doing it. So we're in a different studio this morning because we had a blow up in the old studio. Do you want to bring Mike up for me, and let me try to do it from there, Adam? All right, this is Mike in Aurora. Hey, man, thanks for calling the radio show. Happy Saturday and good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you. I was wondering why you sounded kind of different there.
So we're in a different theater, a different studio.
Speaking of theaters, this whole thing with the drones reminds me of War of the Worlds.
Absolutely.
Orson Welles. I don't know if that's what you said. I started to call.
No, but absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Oh,
People
sure.
are freaking out.
Sure.
And somebody said on cable TV, very nice of these whoever Chinese or Iranians to be using FAA. Very nice of that. Hold on, let me get the punchline in. To be using, compliant FAA blinking lights and everything.
The mothership.
Boy, that's pretty advanced.
What do you think this? I mean, I told you, these are just young people having a good time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's some kind of club. But it's funny. Separately, I also saw on cable TV, they showed these, Amazon starting to use drones to deliver, and those suckers are pretty darn big.
Ooh.
Not as big as what these people, these pilots flying helicopters report. They say these drones are 6 feet wide. That's even bigger than the Amazon ones.
Well,
Amazon ones I saw these Amazon ones. I said, what are they going to deliver with these things? Refrigerators? I mean, they're really
I like the one out of New Jersey. The guy said it was the size of an SUV.
Yeah, I heard that too.
That's a.
Well, I'm thinking, which model? The little Chevy or the giant Trailblazer?
Michael, do you think guys that have the skills, that the ability, could go into a garage and build one?
Yeah, if they're super smart like that healthcare killer guy, with advanced degrees. What was I going to say? I was thinking, I read a few voices out there saying, just shoot the damn thing down.
Did you see the guy in Jersey? The guy in Jersey popping away? And it didn't show the weapon, but I think I know the weapon. And his was, you could see it's almost like his tracer rounds breaking, as tracer rounds give the appearance of doing.
Oh, really?
And he was hitting it. He was hitting it. I'm thinking, all right, somebody's going to.
Well, when I thought of that, I thought of you in Western Pennsylvania. All these people standing around in Jersey saying, we can't do nothing. And I'm thinking, man, it sounds like if this happened in Western Pennsylvania, these things would have been shut down a long time ago.
Well, guys I grew up with. They're out there with them 270s. That's their favorite rifle.
Well, that's what I was saying. Yeah, you don't even have to go too far. You don't even have to go south of the Mason-Dixon line or whatever. And people
good old boys.
Throwing these things out of the sky.
I thought the same thing. I really did. I said, somebody's out there right now waiting. But the ones I saw last night, and I really did legitimately see like 7 of them. and they're flying at such a distance, and trying to get perspective at night's tough. You know, but they move. Some of them move really quickly, and some of them just hover. I've watched them.
Yeah, and like I said, people's reaction just reminds me of my mom told me a story of how her dad, growing up in South Dakota, got out the shotgun.
Sure.
When War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, Orson Welles.
And people are really freaking out. I mean,
my grandma or my mom talked about it, that they really did think that the Martians were crossing the Allegheny River, and that they had poison gas. People actually took their own lives through that. I mean, that was a real thing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, people flipped, and it had to do with dial position, and it had to do with this one very popular show was over. So it was called the Mercury Theater, and people switched to the Mercury Theater. And of course, I think Wells was 23 or 24 years old when he did that.
He's a genius. He's one of my favorites.
Oh, yours and mine. But the thing about Wells, when you read, I've read his life, everything that he did before the age of 30.
Is that true? I did not know that.
Every powerful thing that Wells did, he did.
Well, the makeup, the makeup alone make him look like an old man in Citizen Kane.
He made Kane. He did War of the Worlds. Yeah. He did. Was it? It was that he did Black Macbeth, I think. And he sings it.
I guess. Yeah, he did one in the 50s with Charlton Heston, I think Ava Gardner, and
that's they're in Mexico, and they're I
have to check on that. I have a hard time believing he did that under 30 though.
He did most of his powerful work. He did under the age of 30 or under the age of 35.
Oh, maybe his most. Touch of Evil, I think, is the
Touch of Evil's that film.
That's the one. I think
he would get.
He was in it.
Yep.
And by then this was in the 50s. He had grown very large.
Oh.
And he plays this Texas sheriff.
Yes.
Who I don't know,
let me do this. I'm going to jump. Here we go. Thank you. Let's go to Kevin, if you would. Hey, Kevin, you're on 710 KNUS with Peter Boyles. It's 14 after 9. Thank you for calling the show, and good morning.
Hi. Yeah, as a licensed Part 107 drone pilot, there are a couple of things. To fly at night, the FAA would obviously know what's taking place because you have to get a waiver. Most likely these are military operations or trainings that are going on.
Okay.
And the other thing is I would just give the advice, do not do anything to try to take a drone out of the sky. It is considered the same as shooting down a regular aircraft.
Okay, let me
all
start.
Drones have to be registered as aircraft, even small drones.
Let me start at the beginning. You sound like a man who knows. What are these things that I saw last night?
Well, many of them that people are seeing in New Jersey have actually turned out to be small Robinson helicopters and military helicopters.
Okay.
There are some large drones that they are training with military operations right now. Many of them are covert, so of course the military and the feds are not going to say anything.
All right.
But the fact that they're flying at night with beacons that are flashing, as well as the lights that are required at night, indicate that these are not clandestine operations. They're not trying to hide anything.
Wow. That's very good. That's very good.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you have many people right now who are, as was alluded to earlier, they're going online or to Best Buy or these other places and getting drones, and they're not following the federal regulations. You're required to have them registered with the FAA, and they actually get quote unquote tail number that has to be attached to the aircraft. And for all intents and purposes, they are considered an aircraft, and you can fly them recreationally. But the second you post video or other things online, you're considered a commercial pilot, and you have to get certified as a UAV pilot through the FAA through testing and actually get a version of a pilot's license.
Do you believe these are military or military industrial drones?
They very well could be, and people don't realize that very, very large drones are actually being used in agriculture right now for spraying pesticides, for doing surveys. Oh yeah, right now the fastest growing use of drones, if they're probably close to 10,000 uses of drones right now that have taken place in Ukraine with what they call kamikaze drones that have C4 and other explosives attached, or where you can attach grenades and actually fly right over an individual and drop it. And it is decimating columns of the Russian army right now, actually, with the use of the drones, and they are using them in Syria as well.
So what happens?
But
somebody has to out this, don't they?
Probably, but they're in such common use. Drones are the fastest growing sector right now of in aviation, and they're being used for all types of things, from package deliveries, sandwich deliveries, to surveys, property boundary lines, and people don't realize as well that even though you have your sky above your house, you don't own it. Same thing as mineral rights underneath. So drones can fly between 0 to 400 feet in altitude, and that's the range, and that separates them from then other commercial and private pilots that are flying. So we
watched them last
separation.
night. We watched them last night. My daughter and I watched them, and they can hover or they can zigzag. I mean, they can move.
Well, and even for agricultural purposes, if you're using things like forward-looking infrared, for agricultural use, there are some things where you want to fly them at night, because during the day you'd be getting that reflected heat signature from the sunlight, and you don't get that when you're flying at night, and you get that FAA waiver to do so. But yeah, there are many regulations right now, and some people who are violating them, such as flying over stadiums or anywhere near commercial aircraft. But once again, it is highly illegal to take a shot at them, and people have found out the hard way, because they are treated the same as a regular, same as if you were shooting at a Cessna or a helicopter that's flying over.
Kevin, have you seen that video out of New Jersey where that guy?
Yes.
I mean, it's almost like he has tracer rounds going out there.
I wouldn't doubt it. Yep. And part of what they've had going on there too is that they said that one of the drones was shooting some type of ordnance from the front of it down, and that actually has turned out it was a military helicopter, and they're doing operations as well. And that's the thing; everybody becomes very, very hypersensitive to anything they see in the sky. The other thing is that planes coming in for a landing with their landing lights, particularly large aircraft, can look like drones based on the perception that you get from the ground looking up at the sky. So, and even if you just watch some coming in over the mountains into Denver at night, they look like everything from a satellite at times to some type of strange drone or aircraft that's coming in, when in fact it's just because of the perspective that your eyes get from them.
The helicopters that used to be called little birds. You remember little birds? They were
absolutely.
They could do anything. But they were just amazing. And the little birds were, they were really special operations helicopters.
Yep. And one of the photographs that they showed of the helicopter, it looks like a little Robinson small helicopter.
Well, that's what I thought.
Flying at night. So,
that's what I thought too. I said, that's a little bird.
Yes.
And there, who knows who's riding around in that. Wow. But, I mean, I really do believe it. I mean, it is war of the world stuff, but it's,
and right now there are thousands and thousands and thousands that are being manufactured, even very cheaply, to be used in warfare. And my biggest concern is that somebody is going to that's going to be the next tactic for political assassinations or creating chaos or whatnot, the same tactics that you see being used in Ukraine right now. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to try to stop those types of activities if you're not on alert ahead of time. And the feds do have certain types of instruments that can actually stop a drone, block the signals that are going to it when it's flying, etc. But and Washington D.C. certainly monitors very heavily right now, and it's illegal in many areas, and particularly some urban areas to fly. At this point, you have to get a waiver in order to do it.
As a amateur history reader, it seems that whether it's battleships to aircraft carriers to submarines to, the one after the other, that hundreds of millions of dollars gets flushed as soon as the next technology comes along.
Yes. Well, and now the new things that are taking place are large drones that can actually hold passengers, and they are air taxis. And they've actually done this in New York City. Mayor, what's his name, Adams, was out promoting them. They've had demonstrations, and they look like a large car, but then they look like a drone with the propellers and the engines that are there, very quiet, and they're thinking of transporting people then across the city when there's heavy traffic, and those who can afford it to go around the city in these air taxis that are coming. So
final question: do you believe that some of the eyewitnesses in Jersey say they are as big as SUVs? Do you believe that?
Some of them, and if you even go online, you can look at people that are being lifted off the ground when they're holding on to the skids of some of these drones. Some of them for agriculture can be huge, like I said, and that they can use for spraying pesticides and for doing other types of agricultural work. You can find very, very large drones, and even fixed wing aircraft drones as well that are doing different types of missions these days. But there are a whole slew of activities and that people are utilizing them for business and agriculture and other types of use.
And you believe this is exactly what we're watching?
I would figure,
I favor
the government certainly can do clandestine activities, and if they are doing those at night, they certainly don't want to be giving up the ghost. But it's best if they just, would say these are being used for training activities or whatnot. But we'll see what comes of it.
Best call of the day, and it hasn't even begun. Kevin, thank you very, very much. Everybody, 710 KNUS, we are Denver's talk station. Good morning, everyone. Now coming up is Hannah Parker McCabe, human rights advocate. I do want to get some of this conversation started, and we're not going to spend a lot of time, but watching what's happening with these very powerful men and what they've been doing to these young women. And then Tim Furnish, and then followed by Sam Zakhem about the Assad family and what's taking place in Syria. And then Ron and Bobby Pietrafeso. Dan Kaplis Law. I'm going to do the Dan Kaplis show this Tuesday between 2 and 4, joining Dan on the air. I'm really looking forward to it. We have not partnered up like that in forever. So they've invited me over to spend a couple of hours on the Kaplis show. That'll be this Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Danny suggests you choose a lawyer that shares your values, and because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you. We've talked about Dan's childhood growing up, about his dad and his mom, and he's believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan's also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He's a good man. He really is just a good man. And I say this all the time, but when we had some problems in our family, and Danny came to the rescue, and he was the man to listen to. Serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. He represents good people, all walks of life, without regard to ability to pay. You go to him for help. You need Danny's help at 303-770-5551 or hit caplislaw.com, CAPLIS law.com. And again, I'm excited to get to do 2 to 4 with Danny this coming Tuesday. We are 710 KNUS. It's 9:30 on a Saturday morning, the 14th of December, 710 KNUS, weather 55 the high, and then 54 on Sunday, Monday, 49 degrees. Coming up, Tim Furnish will be with us as well as Ambassador Sam Zakhem. We're going to talk about Syria and the Assad family. Then Ron and Bob Pietrafeso continuing the Elvis Presley stories. In the meantime, please say good morning. Welcome to the show. Hannah Parker McCabe is our guest. Hannah, good morning and thanks for doing the show and welcome to Denver.
Thank you. Good morning.
We got a little bit of an echo. I know that there's some things that are off limits for you to talk about. And so when I put the show together I would just let you speak to us. What are we watching in terms of human trafficking, the charges that are being made against these very, very, very powerful men and what they're doing to young women and to women in general? Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So we are in a very interesting environment, a very scary environment, right? And we are seeing allegations being slung against people. You know, we watched this with Jeffrey Epstein. This really is a continuation of what we're
Kelly,
seeing.
can you come here for a second?
We're getting feedback here.
Yeah.
You are muted.
Would y'all prefer for me to jump on my phone?
We got you?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry
There,
about that.
bingo. All right, bingo, bango, boom. All right. You mentioned Jeffrey Epstein when we broke away.
I did.
I was, and I don't need to put you on the spot, but I was not shocked that that he died in prison at all.
I don't think that many. I don't think the average American got that, unfortunately.
What do you think Jeffrey Epstein knew?
I couldn't tell you what I think he did. I think that's a large assumption to grow, but I would say, you know, he was convicted of the crime that he was. It was alleged to him, and I think he was a very powerful man that misused his means. He violated rights. What he did was very vulgar crime, and he's very organized about it. He's actually very intelligent about it, is the scary part.
He and Harvey now, and everybody in seemingly now in rap music, the prominent names in rap music, but it doesn't exclude politicians. We had made a remark about Bill Clinton and a young woman who was literally years older than his own daughter. What is all of this, or does it say something?
I would say this is domestic. What we're seeing today is domestic human trafficking at its finest. And I've used this analogy in the past. Typically, you know, I spoke on this topic about 3 to 4 years ago during the COVID timeframe, when this was actually running rampant because of the use of technology we had to rely on. Perpetrators were pivoting their means, and it became very scary for our children and the online programs they were using. So what I would tell you is, people always think about human trafficking. They think of the movie Taken, right? Liam Neeson, International, a young girl is abducted at an airport. And that does happen every day. And that's a reality that's very scary. But what's happening in our country, it doesn't look like that. People are not being kidnapped when they arrive here from airports. This is the use of force, coercion, or fraud to force an individual, a woman, a child, and men and boys are not immune to this. So I will make that statement that 54% of the victims of this absurd crime are women and girls. The primary age of girls that we've heard a perpetrator claim to that they are looking for is 12 years old, which is very disturbing. But men and boys are very much a part of this. They make up the ladder of that percentile. So this is very scary what we're seeing. And then, yes, we are seeing people there are many people in America who have idolized these people that
Oh,
we're
absolutely.
speaking, right?
Absolutely.
And then this out, and it's truly disturbing. It's terrifying. These are people with dark souls. That's what
That's well said. I remember James Carville, who I have little, if any, use for, but Carville, when he talked about dragging $100 bill through a trailer park, and what he would come up with, and they were all in defense of what Bill Clinton had been doing, although with one or two exceptions, probably maybe with no exceptions, they were not willing participants in Bill Clinton, and Clinton got away with it. He really did get away with it. And then we move on to Harvey, and my God, this guy is a serial rapist. And why would women, and took that moment where Me Too, why were women quiet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a great question. And I almost want to say, like, I don't want to get into making a victim feel bad for being quiet. So what I will say is, I think a lot of the times women are quiet for various reasons. One main reason that we have heard when being framed on how to relate to survivors and how try to assist them understand is that they're ashamed. That is a big reason, is that they're ashamed, and they should not be. People are victims. They are manipulated, and think about the emotional and mental chains.
Oh.
These aren't physical chains on these people. They are using people like a Jeffrey Epstein or a Harvey Weinstein. They are using their money and their power and their means to control these people, to threaten these people, to emotionally and mentally chain themselves to these people. Another use of force that we have seen perpetrators in human trafficking use is getting their victim addicted to drugs.
Yes.
That is actually a huge way of means, because then think about it. They have a habit then that they are desperate to feed. And then this perpetrator gives them the means to feed that. There are many sick ways of, us seeing this crime. This is absolutely a silent epidemic within our country. And what I'll tell you is it is money motivated, as sick and upsetting as that is to an average American like yourself or myself. It is a $173 billion industry in America alone. Billion with a B. That is absolutely vulgar and disturbing.
Our guest is Hannah Parker McCabe. She's wonderful about talking about human rights, what's happening to women. But now some of this stuff is breaking out of these parties that Diddy threw, and the rape of a 13-year-old girl, but now seemingly very prominent women watched all of this happen. Now, whether or not that's true, but seemingly it is true. And to me, that's almost, I don't know if it's worse, because I don't know how worse gets. But if that's true, then what does that say?
Right. I mean, I think we have barely scratched the surface of what's still yet to come to light and what we are living in present day. And I don't think that we, even as an average American, know the half of it, of what the Department of Homeland Security, for example, fights every day. I think that they're estimating that there's maybe 500,000 perpetrators online every day looking for women, children, boys. You talk about these parties with these powerful parties, and yeah, I mean, this is frightening times. This is frightening that there are individuals in this world that think they are above the law and are above human decency, and they are not.
Yeah, we can go back to Caligula, and you can talk about the Earl of Sandwich and all these, all of the stories of the parties, quote unquote, that were had by very powerful men. And you would think that some of that would have gone to ground, but in fact, it's more so now than even at a time when it was, I don't want to say acceptable, but looked the other way. When somebody starts to sing, and when somebody rolls over, whether it's in a RICO or whatever it is, and they're trying to make a deal, I believe that, and it was really interesting, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, but Jamie Foxx, who had been real ill, and these people that circulate around Jamie Foxx said Jamie Foxx knew when he was gonna speak. He was gonna tell the truth about what he had seen, and they tried to silence Jamie Foxx. Now, I mean, have you heard that?
I actually haven't heard that. I knew that he was actually just read the report of what he was hospitalized for. Very scary. He was near death. So yeah, that is a very interesting point. I don't want to read too much into the connective tissue that there could be with that, but absolutely. I mean, people have tried to speak up and they have been silenced.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the targeting, right? The threatening, the targeting, the fear. And that's just plain wrong. I mean, we don't want to see that in our society. This is not how we should be treating one another. And this is just a vulgar crime, and it needs to stop.
Somebody knows.
Need to be afraid. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are people who know a lot, and especially victims as well. We want to compel those people and instill the confidence in them and the security to stand up and to fight this. I mean, look at what happened with
I was going to bring up Roger Ailes.
Oh, okay. That wasn't the name I was thinking of.
Okay.
Why does his name escape me? He borderline married Aaliyah.
Yep.
But look at what happened with him. R. Kelly. R. Kelly was
another one. Yeah.
That finally those victims band together and they got the confidence from each other to stand up, and they should be commended. I mean, they brought down a strong, powerful man that was doing very good things.
Roger, I'll tell you like a sidebar story. My partner Chuck Monowell and myself and Mark Crowley, we were in Cleveland for the first Trump convention, and my partner Chuck is a really sharp-eyed guy, and he said we just saw, and I didn't see him, Roger Ailes perp walked out of Cleveland, out of the convention, and it wasn't that I didn't believe him, I just didn't see it. And it turned out that's exactly what happened, is that the perp walking had begun, and then he dies, but they pay him off and everybody gets hush hush money, and Fox News is still the grand champion of cable news. And Ailes, and this has nothing to do with Limbaugh, but Ailes creates Limbaugh, and then they back the truck up and say create a network. The guy's absolutely brilliant, but what he did to those women, and got away with it up until a point, got away with it.
Right. And I think that's what we've seen, is we've almost seen an escalation over the decades, right? Of sexual abuse, especially in the workplace, men and women, right? In positions of power, taking, advantage of those that are vulnerable below them, using their means. Men and women are both, I think, responsible for that, right? Over the times. But now we're seeing this escalation of almost building these organized crime rings. I mean, I think what Jeffrey Epstein, for example, built was an organized human trafficking ring. He had incentive plans for these girls to recruit more girls.
Yes.
And that is just, it is absurd how long that went on.
Oh.
Before it actually came out. And so, people have gotten bolder. That's what I feel like. People have gotten emboldened. They do feel that they're untouchable in today's society. There are, I think, certain prominent figures that feel that way. And we as a society need to stand up and let them know that that's not okay. And we're not going to accept that anymore.
There's a tremendous book about chasing Jeffrey Epstein. And when they finally, and this is why what I believe about Jeffrey Epstein, which is only a belief, but they got into his safe. And he's a Jewish American, and he has a legitimate Saudi Arabian passport. And I mean, where does he get that? And
right.
He had the island, and who knows who went to the island and who was on the jet. And I mean, Bill Gates's name comes up, and I mean, he's got And there was a lot of reasons for Jeffrey Epstein not to be able to speak.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, he had, I think, everything to lose and nothing to gain, right, in that situation. And it's upsetting how that played out. It's upsetting to see a man who I think was praised for a lot of great things over the years kind of have that fall of his empire. But he had his day. He was found guilty of those crimes, and he had his day. And unfortunately, it is sad how he came to his demise. It really is. I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but he had a lot to lose. I think there were a lot of prominent people allegedly involved that they had a lot to lose too.
See, and I'd be the most shocked guy in the world if Diddy survives inside the penitentiary in New York, because he's probably paying protection money right now to stay alive in jail. Mm-hmm. But he knows too much. And
yeah, I would be very afraid if I was him. I'm not going to lie. I would be afraid if I was just me going to jail.
Yeah.
But I will say that, he has not been found guilty of anything. If he is found guilty of what they are alleging and what's been coming out, and people who, both perpetrators and victims, high profile names on both sides of the fence have been named in this. So until everything is, they have their just day in court, and if he is found guilty, then yeah, I think my prayers can go out for him. But I will say this: if he is found guilty of everything that's being alleged of him, he deserves to go to prison. He needs to pay for that.
And they on the tabs, which is my source of this, a lot of people are sweating rocks. If he talks, or the next person talks, or the one person rolls over and talks, there's people that are going to have big problems, real big problems.
And, I don't even want to know. It's like, I think, being naive in this situation is best for me. I don't even want to know all the details that may or could come out. But I think it goes to show you that this is just a case that is in broad daylight in front of our eyes as American citizens. Think of all of the things that are going on the dark web and behind our eyes that we don't get to see or hear about. Very sick, disturbing things. And we all have to come together, both on higher levels of power, like our government, our elected officials, and average citizens. And we have to try to eradicate this. We have to try to stop this.
Can I get you to hold on 1 second? I do something. We'll come back to you. Our guest, she's terrific. She'll be back. Hannah Parker McCabe is with us. I'm Peter Boyles, 710 KNUS, and our friends at the Water Pros. Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. You can remove forever chemicals and microplastics and hard water with Water Pros Peter Boyles special for $3,195. Sounds like a bite, but you get an unbelievable water softener, water solutions, point of use, reverse osmosis drinking water systems, fully installed and maintained. Start the process. Here's what I would do. Go to waterpros.net and sign up for your free in-home consultation. They will come to your home. They will test your water. They will answer all of your questions and concerns about your water. I trust these guys. They just did great work for us. They will for you. Water Pros, family-owned and veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you with the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. So you go to waterpros.net today and get this. Get the free water test. You call 303-862-5554, 303-862-5554, 303-862-5554. Make the appointment for them to come to the house. They come for free. They do the test for free. They show you the results for free. They're Water Pros, 303-862-5554. It's December 14th, 2024. Good morning, everyone. Saturday, sunny and 55's the high. Motorcycles outside, 54 on Sunday. On Monday, it is 49 degrees. This is an absolutely wonderful guest, Hannah Parker McCabe. And it's all now no longer flying below the radar. Sex trafficking, powerful men in these sex rings. And the victims are oftentimes, well, the one case that we're reading about, that little girl was 13 years old, allegedly raped by two moguls, by music moguls, with yet a very powerful third person watching a woman. Is this going to be the collapse of all of this, Hannah? What do you think?
I can't imagine that it's not, right? And I think we all want to be hopeful that it will be. And yeah, these names that we're referencing, that we won't name specifically, but you can do your research, right? I'm hoping that this is not true. I think every average American hopes that this is not true. But if it is, then all of these people are guilty of a very vulgar, heinous crime, and they deserve to have their day for that.
What happens to them if they're found guilty?
Oh gosh, I would hope that our justice system and the court of law would take them through the measures that it needs to, right? This needs to be something that money and power and fortune and fame does not buy you out of any longer. We need to demand better for ourselves, for our children, and that needs to stop.
How much of this is predicated on the Me Too movement that finally women gathered together and started what we mentioned, Roger Ailes, mentioned Jeffrey Epstein. How much of this is finally coming out because of unity of women who have been victims?
Yeah, I think it's not a coincidence that we are seeing an uptick in the amount of awareness and cases and allegations being brought since the Me Too movement started. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think, like I said, that these victims and women and men are banding together and they're finally finding enough strength and unity, like you mentioned, to come out. And they should. That's what we want. And I have to say, like, you know, with everything, with the case that is ongoing that I want to be careful to speak on, you know, Cassie deserves a lot of credit. She's the first person who spoke up.
Oh, you bet. You bet.
And I think that because of what she had witnessed, I'm going to make the assumption, obviously I don't know her, but I would make the assumption as a fellow woman that I'm sure of what she had witnessed in the past. She was sick and tired of it happening to herself. She didn't want it to happen to anyone else anymore. And she finally said enough. And she didn't care about the risk and the threats that came.
No, I mean, Roger Ailes is one of those pivot centers who, I mean, like I said, if you look at our business, talk radio and network news, cable news, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Jeffrey Epstein is, I don't know clearly what Jeffrey Epstein even did for a living, but when the Weinsteins, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. And yet, and Diddy and these guys, they're brilliant in what they did, but what they did.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, I've always been a person who's believed that criminals are not stupid. They're smart.
No.
Incredibly smart people.
Yeah.
And especially to get away with something of this magnitude for this many years. Not only were they smart and they were organized and they were purposeful about, you know, like Jeffrey Epstein, for example, what he was orchestrating, but they used their power to threaten people and to silence them. They used their money to silence them. And so that's how this went on for so many years until finally someone said, your money's no good here anymore.
And in some places they got the knock on the door and they got the warning, don't do this. And that's scared a lot of young women. You're terrific. After the first of the year, we'll get you back because this is expanding as we speak. And Hannah, you're a gift. Hannah Parker McCabe, everybody. Thank you, ma'am. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you after the first of the year.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January. So use your local resources around you wherever you are. I'm in Florida. Y'all are in Colorado. This is a problem in all 50 states. So educate yourselves and let's keep talking about it.
You take care of yourself, ma'am. Thank you very much. All right, coming up, the collapse of the Assad regime has prompted a punishing military response from Israel. I'm troubled with this. They've launched airstrikes at military targets across Syria. It's the first time There's a buffer zone that's been there for 50 years. And the Israeli military on Tuesday said it had carried out 480 strikes across the country over the past 2 days, hitting the Syrian weapons. And Netanyahu has hailed the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime as a new and dramatic chapter. Coming up, Tim Furnish, Sam Zakhem, and then we'll continue with the Pietrafeso brothers in studio as well. It is a Saturday. I'm Peter Boyles. Thank you for being here. Hang by. Dr. Tim Furnish is next here on 710 KNUS. Morning, everybody. December the 14th, 2024. I'm Peter Boyles, on the air everywhere. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. 55, says the 710 KNUS Weather Center. 54 54 on Sunday, and 49 degrees on Monday. The collapse of the Assad regime has prompted a punishing military response from Israel, which has launched airstrikes at military targets across Syria, deployed ground troops both into and beyond. There was a buffer zone, a DMZ, for the first time in 50 years. Israeli military on Tuesday said it carried out about 480 strikes across the country in the past 2 days, hitting most of Syria's strategic weapons stockpiles. Earlier yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has hailed the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime as a new and dramatic chapter in the Middle East. Please say good morning. He is a great guest and a good friend. Dr. Tim Furnish joins us. Dr. Furnish, good morning. Thank you, and welcome back to 710 KNUS.
Hi, Peter. It's been a while, but thanks for having me back.
Yeah, I thought of you immediately. I don't know what to do with this. I have my own sense of it. First of all, if we could, do the Assad family, which has ruled Syria since 1971. Speak about the Assads.
Well, the important thing to know about the Assads is that they are members of the Alawi sect, which is a 10-11% of the population in Syria. And they basically ran the Ba'ath Party, which is the secular Arab Socialist Party, same party that Saddam belonged to over in Iraq next door, by the way. But what happened was when the Ba'ath Party took over in the 60s, and then al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad's father, who was the chief of the Air Force, after he took over in 71, as you pointed out, infiltrated members of that sect, the Alawi sect, which is it's some would say heterodox, but most Muslims consider Alawism to be basically a heretical. It's not even Muslim. It's considered to be a heretical separate religious movement. Infiltrated folks from that religious minority into the intelligence and military services and into the government. And basically you had Syria run then by sort of a family clique that also represents a very small minority sect, because about 75% of Syria is Sunni Muslim. And then they tried to run it as sort of a secular state with some Christian allies and some of the other sects like the Druze and some of the smaller Shia sects cooperating with the Alawis, with the government. But, it's really hard to run a government like that when 75% of the population doesn't like you. And plus, needless to say, they weren't exactly benevolent rulers. I mean, they were very thuggish. I mean, they were fighting against people that were thuggish. Starting way back, this, maybe a lot of listeners don't, but way back in 1982, the Muslim Brotherhood tried to overthrow the Assad regime. And Bashar al-Assad killed, by some estimates, something like 40,000 of them. So it's been a really precarious situation. People wonder why Iran was allied with them. And basically, it was you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. The Iranians pretended that the Alawis were Shia like them, and they're distantly related to Shia, but they're different. They're very, very different in many ways. And meanwhile, the Assad regime, first with Hafez, and then with Bashar's son, who took over in 2000 after he died, basically got sort of an imprimatur from a major power that they were quote unquote legitimate Muslims, but more importantly, they got money and military support. Hour after Bashar took over, and then the so-called Arab Spring revolts broke out in 2011. The Iranians and then, of course, the Russians, for different reasons, backed the Assad regime, the Alawi regime. And then that all collapsed last week, and then that's how we got where we are.
How and why did it collapse?
Three big reasons. Russia is very occupied with Ukraine. Russia doesn't have time or energy to dedicate to keeping the Assad regime in power. I mean, one of the major reasons they stayed in power was because of Russian airstrikes. So against the various jihadist groups and the other groups that were allied against the Damascus government. And the other big one, of course, is Iran. Iran has gotten its nose bloodied, to put it mildly, by Israel, and Iran has had to pull back on its support. And then I think the other big reason is that if you read reports, the Syrian army was just sort of a shell. Again, it was run by members of this Alawi sect, but of course the vast majority of people in the army were Sunni conscripts, and they don't want to fight for the regime. Nobody liked the regime that wasn't a member of the Alawi sect, pretty much, except, well, maybe some of the Christians supported it because they feared jihadist rule, and we may have to talk about that in a bit, depending on what you want to talk about. But basically, the army had become a joke. They weren't willing to fight. They weren't equipped well. And then the two major outside supporters and protectors of the regime, the Russians and the Iranians. The Russians, I think, were at this point really unable to help anymore, and the Iranians were, I think, unwilling at this point.
If what witnessed in the past, when these despots, and I believe that something that was once dubbed Arab Spring is in fact Arab Winter. Do you buy into that?
Yeah, that Arab Spring turned out to be a joke. Remember, it was going to bring Jefferson. Remember, you and I used to talk about this.
Right.
Yeah, as if everyone in the Middle East is just pining for Jeffersonian democracy.
Yeah.
No, I don't really think so. Particularly in much of the Arab world, many people in the Middle East, not all, but many, are pining for something quite different, which is Sharia law.
Yes.
And so yeah, it's just the Arab Spring was. It started with that fellow that set himself on fire in Tunisia way back in 2011, and it spread, pardon the pun, like wildfire. And it turned into basically just anti-government movements in many of the Arab countries. Syria, Yemen, started out in Egypt, it kind of got snuffed.
Tripoli.
North Africa.
Right.
And for the most part, it sort of petered out. It just was another one of the periodic outbreaks of anti-regimes and violence that didn't really do much of anything anywhere. Except one might argue in Yemen, but I think there were different reasons in Yemen. But that's a different story entirely. So yes, it didn't turn into sort of vast movement of democracy. It just turned into another sort of bit of fuel on the fire of malcontent and protest. And what the interesting thing, though, is, Peter, is, again, people thought that it had sort of petered out here, and we had a status quo ante, I guess you could say, in Syria, where the government controlled, I don't know, maybe 50, 60% of the country, and the various major other opposition groups controlled 30, 40% or whatever it was. But boy, that sure came tumbling down last week.
The Israeli invasion, how does this play out?
Well, I guess it's sort of an invasion. I think it's more sort of like grabbing some key strategic heights, literally the Golan Heights, and then just making sure that they don't make the same mistake that we made in Afghanistan, which was leaving a fundamentalist Islamic state with a whole bunch of modern weaponry, with the added wrinkle, of course, that the Syrian government had chemical weapons at one point. I don't know if they're still operating.
Well, they did.
Because, those things tend to break down, though, over time. I'm not sure if they're still, intact, but certainly they did have chemical weapons caches. And so the Israelis want to make sure that was taken out. So that was the big thing, I think. Israel is just making sure that if the government, if the coalition government that's taken power, which is led by, but not totally controlled yet by HTS, Harakat al-Tahrir al-Sham, which is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, that group won't have a whole raft of modern weapons, including chemical weapons, to potentially use against Israel. You mentioned Netanyahu earlier. This is something about this being a new day in the Middle East. Well, you might be careful what you wish for there,
my point,
Benjamin, because if, as I pointed out in my article, which I don't know if you got a chance to read it or not, but I had an article about this last week in the stream. HTS is it's a fundamentalist group. It's a jihadist group. And they're saying all the right things right now because they're still consolidating power. But the first thing I thought of, Peter, and you'll know this, was what happened with the Iranian Revolution.
You stole it from me.
Right.
That was
The Ayatollahs cooperated with the Tudeh party, the communists. They cooperated with several other groups of opposition to the Shah. And then until Khomeini consolidated his power, then they all went to prison, or they all went to meet their maker.
And the same thing happened with Gaddafi. Is, you know, that was back to when Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. And that's when I'm watching this stuff. I know in one of the short visits that I've had in the Middle East, but the soldiers were crossing, and that, interestingly enough, there was Hezbollah. They were going in to fight against the same people that the American government alleged to be fighting against inside of Syria. And they were,
right.
I mean, you know, you have been such a great gift in my life to try and figure out, you know, who's on first. But the Israeli officials have now talked about the downfall of Assad. Assad was an ally, as you pointed out, of Iran, who allowed his country to be used as a resupply route for Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Yep, exactly.
And so
that was one of the big reasons they signed on to supporting originally his father, was so they could get proximity to Lebanon and thus have a front against Israel. Exactly.
So when they feared that they could come from these radical Islamists governing Syria, which borders Israel, and as you pointed out, the Golan, what happens if they decide to occupy? You got enough problems in Lebanon. You have enough problems internally. You have enough problems now. I mean, this idea of that great line from Netanyahu, that is a new and dramatic chapter, reminded me of George Herbert Walker Bush, the New World Order. Wait a minute.
New World Order, lots like the old world order.
A lot like it.
Well, basically, HTS is very much like Hamas. I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference between the Al Qaeda affiliated groups and the Muslim Brotherhood affiliated groups, although they have longer beards and don't wear ties.
That's right.
I mean, that's the big difference. And so, you know, the Israelis, it's true that right now the most immediate existential threat to Israel is Iran. That's true.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that who is, you know, 12 or Shia, and they have their own reasons for disliking Israel, and we don't have time to go into that, but they certainly do. But the Sunni fundamentalists like Hamas dislike them no less.
Yes.
And if HTS, as we were talking about a moment ago, and by the way, HTS stands for the Movement to Liberate the Levant. Al-Sham is an Arabic word for basically Greater Syria.
All of it.
Yeah. So if they decide to if they consolidate power and do indeed push aside the others, I mean, right now they're in sort of a loose coalition with a few groups that might be a little less problematic, but not a whole lot, except for the Kurds, and the Kurds have their own problems. The Kurds really don't give a damn what happens in Damascus. They're just trying to keep free of the Turks bombing them. So if HTS does push those other groups aside and then start doing what they really want to do, which they clearly want Sharia law. I mean, in his little victory speech the other day, Al-Jolani said that this is a victory for the Islamic nation. He didn't say this is a victory for Syria.
No, and I wrote down my notes last night. What will come, Dr. Tim Furnish is here, one of my true favorites. What will come from a radical Islamist government in Syria, which borders Israel and the occupied Golan Heights? If you have a government there that, especially if it's in line with Hezbollah, I don't know where this day is coming from. The new day is coming.
Well, they're not going to like Hezbollah, but they both would agree that they both hate Israel.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But basically, it would be like having a much larger Gaza Strip full of Hamas people on your northern border.
Churchill and Stalin against Hitler.
Yeah.
With regard,
so again, like I said, be careful what you wish for, because this may work out to be better, but I really doubt that in the long run it will for Israel.
I don't think it, Doctor. I don't think it. I think that once again we'll repeat what happened to Saddam. We'll repeat what happened to Gaddafi. We'll repeat what has happened throughout the Middle East. I mean, there's this cultural aspect that you've been such a helpful person for me to understand. There is not a small d Democrat wanting to get out.
Not in the Arab world at this point. I mean, there may be a few, but they're not the majority, and they don't hold the levers of power.
Yes. And by the way, what does this now do to our gallant ally, the Saudi Arabians, putting these guys in Syria on the border of Assad?
Yeah, we haven't heard a whole lot from Saudi Arabia lately, have we?
No.
Isn't it interesting? Yes, again, HTS was originally the Al-Qaeda branch in Syria.
Yes.
And they broke away, and another branch broke away and became ISIS. So again, what's the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda? Not a whole heck of a lot.
Not much.
And both of them despise the House of Saud. So now you've got, basically what's happening is a non-state actor is becoming a state actor. A terrorist group.
Yes.
And by the way, Al-Jilani is on our list of official terrorists.
Yes.
So, you have a terrorist group that was non-state now becoming the head of a state.
Let me read you. I pulled down a lot of Netanyahu. The collapse of the Syrian regime, this is a quote, is a direct result in the severe blows with which we have struck Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. The axis has not yet disappeared, but I promise we are changing the face of the Middle East. I'm not sure.
Well, he changed the face, but again, the face that's now appearing is just as diametrically opposed to you, with just slightly different visage on it.
So if the Israelis have looked at the downfall of Assad, who is a staunch ally of Iran, who allowed his country to be used as this resupply route for Hezbollah in Lebanon, but they also fear what could come from radical Islamist governing Syria that borders Israel at the same place, the Golan Heights. Wow. If you
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, if you were going to pick them, what would you say?
I would say, as I mentioned in my article, I think it's just a matter of time before HTS pushes aside the others, takes over control. Certainly of central Syria. I mean, they control much of Syria. You've got that group in the north, which is backed by Turkey, which controls part of which people always say is secular, but it also includes groups like Ahrar al-Sham, which also was a fundamentalist Sunni jihadist group just as much as HTS. They just had a little different take on things. And then, of course, the northeast of the country is the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, which is basically just Kurdish groups writ large. Now, the big thing will be, of course, what bit of oil that Syria has is in the northeast, which is right now under Kurdish control. Yeah. Is HTS going to want to go take them on and try to get control of that? Because that's the ones that we're mainly out there with. And by the way, we also have a base still in Syria, the Al-Tanf base in south central Syria. Yeah. We have a base there.
One more, because I know your time's tight. There have been 400, by their own admission, 480 airstrikes have been carried out by the Israeli Air Force. 350 of them are, because we talked about this earlier, manned aircraft strikes targeting airfields, anti-aircraft batteries, missiles, drones, fighters, tankers, weapons production sites in Damascus, in Palmyra, throughout all of Syria. It was done by the IDF. The rest of the strikes were in support of ground operations as the IDF invades. Mm-hmm. How does that work throughout the Middle East, where the hatred is so great? I mean, Netanyahu is a gutsy fill in the blank.
Yeah, but I mean, it may be, I can see it makes a lot of sense what they're doing in terms of the strikes. Again, taking out the weapons, and particularly making sure the chemical weapons are not intact. But seizing Mount Hermon and some of that area up around the Golan Heights, I mean, you're basically just, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Russians invade Ukraine. Wait, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why is it okay if the Israelis do it?
Yes.
Saddam took Kuwait, and we went to major war over that.
Yes.
So I guess it depends on who's doing the invading.
Always does.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book right now that I recommend. It's Brand's book. It's called America First, about Lindbergh and Roosevelt and what was taking place in the First World War. And it echoes with all of this. You know, the Sudetenland's one thing, Czechoslovakia is another. You know, that how the game is played internally and how they were able to look one way and then not look the other way. I had a sat down with a great friend, and we were talking about the island of Bahrain, and he had a great line. He said, "That is the island that Muhammad can't see." He said, Muhammad can see the entire Middle East, but he can't see Bahrain because they serve alcohol. You know, there's like, I mean, I've been to Bahrain once in Manama, and it's true. And they said, well, Muhammad can't see it.
Yeah.
I thought, what a great line. What a great line. And so what? And so what?
Yeah, well, I see where Blinken keeps putting out statements, but
Yes.
nobody pays any attention to him anymore anyway. So I think no one pays any attention to the Biden administration at all. So
No.
since, you know, the president-elect is the guy they're paying attention to, which makes sense, which is kind of sad, however. I mean, I hope Joe doesn't actually sit on the nuclear football or something. But
Do you think, as I think, that Putin, how many phone calls Putin's made to Trump and how many times Netanyahu's talked to Trump? And yeah, I do too.
Putin is going to meet with Trump, and Trump will probably call a meeting with him and Zelensky and pull a Theodore Roosevelt, negotiate it into that madness.
The Russo-Japanese War.
Yep. No, got a Nobel Prize for it.
He did. TR got a Nobel Prize for it. And
I think Trump will do that. And I think it'll be interesting to see. I think one of the reasons that they did this, that HTS made the move when they did, and the rest of them, was they wanted to do it before Trump was in office.
I believe that as well.
Yeah.
You know, get it done before he gets here. Because when do you think who's running this country right now? By the way, get to sidebar you.
I said this to my wife the other day. I think that these agencies and what's going on right now in the government, it's like they're all on autopilot.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing coming out of the White House, and I think they're just doing their own thing, and seeing how much damage they can do and how much money they can spend before Vivek and Elon get in there.
Would you pardon your son?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. But you would have not said you were not going to pardon him.
No, I wouldn't have lied about it for 2 years.
Yeah.
I would have just said, well, we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. Yes, I'm pretty sure I'd pardon my son. Yeah.
As this continues, maybe sneak it back into the show next week for a few minutes to get an update on this, because, I mean, this is ever moving and ever quickly moving. And
yep.
Do you think Assad's still alive? They said there was a plane crash, which is like one of those Lynn Piao gets on the airplane and the airplane just blows up, or the Lubin poles, or, you know, all these different times that we've lost people on airplanes. I wonder if Assad's still alive. We lost him. Nuts. All right. So here's what we do. We're going to turn around, and we have a half an hour of open lines, right? And then we will come back with Sam Zakhem and then Ron and Bob Pietrafeso. Lines are open. We opened the show on drones, and it was really, really good. And now back through this and your thoughts maybe on Middle East. 303-696-1971. Lines are wide open. I'm Peter Boyles. Ski resorts experiencing better snow conditions, making it a perfect time to consider taking your skis and snowboards for a tune-up, maybe even getting new gear for Christmas. And here comes our friends. The best winter sports equipment. He's still there, I think, on the line somehow. We're hearing somebody. Best winter sports equipment. Head over to Larson Ski and Sport, located just south of I-70 on Kipling. So whether you're looking to rent, and remember with little kids, you always rent or buy equipment, Larson's got you covered. They're dedicated to providing you with the best skiing experience possible. The convenience of Larson's is unbeatable. A perfect stop on your way up or down the mountain. Now, the best way, if you're going east, if you're going up the hill, get off on the Kipling exit. You come down the ramp and make a left and go under I-70, come out the other side, look to your right, and you'll see a big wooden box store, Larson Ski and Sports, 7 days a week. If you're coming home, take the Kipling exit coming down on 70, take the Kipling exit to stay to your right, make the right turn on Kipling. There you'll see them, big wooden box store. That's Larson Ski and Sport. It is just amazing, the equipment that they have. John Marriott, his son Jack, Paul, all the guys at Larson Ski and Sport, absolute experts in everything you need for winter sports. Stop in today, tell them you heard it from me. Larson Ski and Sport, south of I-70 on Kipling. Avoid the great big giant guys and go home to the right people. 303-423-0654, 303-423-0654, larsonsport.com. Morning, everybody. My friends, December 14th, 2024, coming up on Christmas. It's a Saturday. It's going to be sunny and 55, tomorrow 54, and on Monday 49 degrees. Coming up, Ambassador Sam Zakhem, and followed by Ron and Bob Pietrafeso. That has really turned out to be a great series. We go to the phones, lines are jammed, but it started out, and I brought the book in to give to Ron and to Bob, entitled Elvis and the Colonel. And that guy was wonderful, just a great guest. And then the Pietrafeso stories came up, and then Ron came on, and I was only fair to have his brother Bob with him. And so we'll do that. And we'll come, that is at noon, Sam Zakhem at 11. And now here we are in open lines. We will start with Jack in Wyoming. One line is open. Jack, you're on a radio show. Good morning.
My phone. Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm driving up to Torrington, near Hawk Springs on 85. You know where that's at. I'm going pheasant hunting.
Of course I do.
I know there's two bars there, and I know you don't drink, but I'm sure you know where the bars are. Hey, here's my thing. This has been driving me crazy forever, and I hear all these stations offer this service, title protection on your home, and they go on these things. They say, well, somebody can claim that they have title to your property, and they take a loan out, and then you could end up being stuck with responsible paying the loan. Well, the reason why that drives me crazy is because that's virtually impossible under the law. In order for anybody to do that and create a fraud like that, and it's actually, the law is called the statute of frauds. And what the statute of frauds says, there has to be a proof of money in exchange. They call it consideration. It doesn't have to be money. It could be swapping another house for it. But if the party that's frauding you cannot prove that you had a transaction with them and signed off on it and gave them the property, then you're not responsible for whatever they did. Whoever the lender is gets stuck with it. All you'd have to do is go to court and say to the judge that you need the other party or the lender to prove that you had ever entered into agreement or received consideration from the party that took out the loan. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's an affirmative defense. It's foolproof. So why would I go and pay some other service that's going to protect me from something that I'm already protected for by the law? And all it would take is a summary judgment. It would take you 2 days in a courtroom to get it thrown out.
Well, first of all, you're in over my head. Number two, I've heard the ads, and I've learned to tune ads out. I'm sorry to say
well,
that.
I know your station plays them, but it's absolutely absurd that somebody can look. Right. You're not responsible for somebody else's fraud, Peter.
Well, my advice to you is call the sales office. I really legitimately, I'm not trying to dog it. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, any of your listeners that are in real estate, that's the first thing they teach you in real estate is the statute of fraud, and that's the first thing they teach you in real estate in law school. I mean, it's so basic. I mean, and you don't need anything beyond that to protect yourself.
Fair enough. Thank
right,
you,
man.
Hi, Bubba. Thanks, everybody. David Ellis, holiday time. You've heard me telling you about taking valuables to David Ellis Jewelers to get a fortune in cash. Secure an appraisal from David for all the valuables you've tucked away in your home. And it's true. This is gift giving time. Shop David Ellis. In case you don't have a Rolex, I'm getting a new watch band done. David's doing that for me now. Just in case you don't have a Rolex watch, rare coins, or a silver tea set, go and see David for all the most meaningful gift giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers has just the right item for just the right person, just the right price, special people that mean something to you. It is holiday gift giving time. An antique watch, an emerald pendant, a gold necklace, a diamond ring. This trusted jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques in Colorado for decades. David is a friend. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces people in your family will love. Visit David Ellis and see for yourself. See the man. Look for the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. Explore DavidEllisJewelry.com or call David 303-322-8779. It is amazing the things that come through there. The gifts are there. The man is there. 303-322-8779. Tell David Ellis that Peter Boyles sent you. We go with full lines. David in San Francisco, you're on the radio show. Good morning.
Oh, Bashar, Peter wants to talk to you. Assad here. What do you want to know, Peter?
I don't want to know anything from you.
My doctor friend stopped by. Hey, I heard you talking, with the earlier callers, both of them actually, the previous one talking about Syria and also previously talking about Jeffrey Epstein.
Yep.
Do you remember the old book, Catch-22?
Of course.
Yeah, you can watch the movie and you get a general idea of it, but if you read the book, it goes into more detail about how the war was really run by companies. It wasn't run for patriotism. One corporation would try to profiteer from the situation, and so they would cause battles to be lost, or they would.
But remember, I mean, that's a wonderful book, but remember, it's a fiction. It's the catch. Remember what the catch is.
Well, if you learn that the war is insane, you're not insane, and you can't escape the war.
If you want to fly, then you're insane. And so,
well, that's one way of spinning it.
That's what they said. You know, when you were trying not to you were trying not to fly. That was the catch. The catch. Well, it's Catch-22.
When he joined up, for listeners that aren't aware, the hero of the story is a bombardier in a plane.
Yes.
And it's such a dangerous job that you can get drafted and do 2 years, but you only have to fly 5 times total. And it's that dangerous. And if you survive 5 times, then you're given a medal, right? So
I thought it was 25.
Well, they kept jacking it. They were trying to kill the witness. The hero. Hero.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the hero realizes what he's doing is working for a corporation, and that he's bombing buildings that belong to U.S. companies. But the example specifically is that there's some cotton stored on a U.S. base that was bought at a bad price.
Remember when things are written. This is important and significant, and 22 is one of them. Slaughterhouse-Five is another one. We can get down a list of wonderful books I love. But they were written during Vietnam. And like the television show MASH, if you think that MASH was about Korea, you were wrong. It was about Vietnam. And so when they wrote Catch-22 was written, and it's one of my favorite books, but it's being written during the Vietnam War. Most of those books that came really were about the current situation as opposed to the time period of 1944.
Well, it was Joseph Hiller, right? And didn't he survive?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't he survive the bombing at Dresden?
No, that was Kurt Vonnegut. Okay.
Well, in any case, if I remember right, it was written about World War II.
Well, but again, these guys write when the first writers come back, and Leon Uris and Leon Uris is the first of the novelists. There's several great novelists. James Joyce comes along and writes. He writes From Here to Eternity, and then he writes Whistle, and he writes Some Came Running. Uris writes Battle Cry. These guys wrote about the war, and they were the first ones to write about the war. And
they were writing about the black market, especially. And see, that was where the scam was these corporations didn't want the war to end because it was emergency spending. If you're on regular spending, you get a pittance every month. But if you're on emergency spending, you get a largesse every time an emergency happens.
It's so easily said at 2024, but remember, the United States of America, after Pearl Harbor and after Guam and Wake Island, Our back was to the wall. Don't kid yourself. And the United States was in trouble. The United States, the Nazis declare war on America 3 days after Pearl Harbor. And this country, it's not good. And I was trying to explain something to Jeff Hunt and Billy Thorpe the other day. Americans never saw the body of a dead American until Tarawa. And the first time the newsreels showed Tarawa, this country was in trouble. This country was in a lot of trouble in 1942. And
well, because there were the intrigues.
No, more than that. More than that. We were in trouble. Had the Japanese come back for the so-called second strike and all the things that went with it, things could have been quite different. But it's easy to sit now and to write these books, and they're very good. I'm a big fan. I love them, but they are just what they are. And
well, the bigger picture I'm trying to get across, and this goes back to the American Civil War, that some of these corporations would try to drag the war on so that they could profiteer. There's a book called Why Was Lincoln Murdered that talks about how the Secretary of War, Stanton, was buying cotton from the South secretly.
Sure. And we're going to do raw capitalism here. We're going to do but it's all true. But the Second World War, not the First World War, but the Second World War is this standalone moment that hopefully is never replicated. But when you look at the war leaders and you look at the people who are involved, you find yourself coming away with a lot of pride.
Yes and no. I'm talking about the European ones as well as the Americans.
The Europeans are there is no Europe left standing. There is.
That's why the corporate state is what it was all about.
No, that's what was the Marshall Plan. They knew that if they did not rebuild as quickly as they could, the communist movement in Europe was so powerful, whether it was in northern Italy, whether it was in Greece, whether it was in Germany itself, whether it was in England. You had to get Europe back on its feet. And there was a brilliant man by the name of George Marshall, who I think was a hero for this country. It was later Joe McCarthy attempted to destroy that man. And it was.
You mean Marshall? Yeah, right. Because Joe McCarthy was signing documents to allow Nazis into America.
Oh, they let everybody. Everything. I got to break it off. Everything about Operation Paperclip.
Right.
Was bringing them in.
And that's what I'm saying. It was corporate, not political. And the thing that I disagree with you is I support taxation with representation. These corporations don't want to pay taxes.
You just jumped.
They want to have a representation.
You just did 16 quantum leaps on me.
The corporations don't like taxation with representation. They like representation without taxation.
I myself personally do not like taxation. But
I don't mind it. We got the fire department. We got the sewer department. We got fresh water coming out of our tap.
That's not what we're talking about. I got to pull the pin. Cool. Thank you. All right, we come back. We have one line open, 710 KNUS. Money, Guns, and Lawyers. Saturday morning, December 14th, 2024. I'm Peter Boyles. Good old 710 KNUS coming up. Former ambassador to Bahrain, Sam Zakhem, and then Ron and Bob Pietrafeso for 2 great hours. 55 will be the high today, and ski resorts are experiencing better snow conditions in a long, long time, making it a great time to consider taking your skis and boards and in for a tune, or maybe better, getting the new gear for the holidays. The best winter sports equipment. Head over to Larson Ski and Sport, located south of I-70 on Kipling. Jack Marriott, everybody that's there, John, his dad, whether you're looking for renting or buying equipment, Larson's got you covered. That worked. They dedicated you to providing the best skiing experience possible. Convenience of Larson's is unbeatable. Perfect stop on your way up or down the mountain. If something's happened or you've had it with something, I'm going to get new, fill in the blank. You're coming down I-70, hit the Kipling exit, go down the Kipling exit, stay right, go down. You're on Kipling, turn, head south, see a wooden building right on your right-hand side, pull in the parking lot. Whatever you need, whatever you want, it is there at Larson Ski and Sport. You find them, large wooden building next, and again, south on I-70 on Kipling. John Marriott and the guys at Larson, absolute experts at everything you need for winter sports. Stop in today. Tell them I sent you. Larson Ski and Sport, south of I-70 on Kipling, 7 days a week. They're there now. 303-423-0654, 303-423-0654, or larsonsport.com. They are just the best. We got time. Let's try Jim in Littleton. Jim, we're going to run up on time. Welcome to the show. Thank you and good morning.
Good morning, Peter. I look forward to your talk with Sam Zakhem.
Thank you.
I'm thinking that a lot of people, this is clearly a failure of our intelligence apparatus of what happened in Syria, that this happened so quickly, and I don't really think we had much knowledge of it before time that it happened. And the more I'm reading about this, this is basically a Al-Qaeda number 2.
Oh, absolutely.
They're, and if we think good things are going to happen about it, I don't think exactly.
It's wrong.
I think I'm really concerned because I think it may be the reemergence, and I'm hearing that they're going to go back into Iraq once they get a stronghold in Syria.
And we're
going to have this.
The country that if I were a member of, I'd be sweating rocks is Saudi Arabia.
How so?
Well, now if
they're Sunni,
if Syria goes into the hands of the people that I think it's going into the hands of, we'll talk to the ambassador. Now they got a ring, and plus the invasion by the Israelis. It's not getting attention. I don't know if it's not getting attention for other reasons, but this is very, very, very precarious right now, James. Very precarious.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. I just am afraid that the reemergence of ISIS and, in just a kinder, general form, but it's still the same thing. And for your listeners to know, the only people that are going to lose out of this are Christians that are still left in the Middle East.
And there are very, very few of them left.
Correct. I have a lot of friends that are from Syria that are Christians.
Sure.
And they did okay. They did okay under Assad.
They did okay under They did okay in Iraq. They did okay in Syria.
Yes.
It wasn't.
I agree.
It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't.
Right. Christians are just they're getting massacred here, and I just feel like are we gonna? What Trump's inheriting a bee's nest, and I don't know how he's gonna come out cleaning this out, because if he goes in there, go ahead.
He says he can settle it, and he's got that 100-day moment. I'm being told to break. We got to take a turnaround, but it's on him now. Thank you. Okay, on the other side, former ambassador to Bahrain. I've traveled in the Middle East with him. His name is Sam Zakhem. And then Ron and Bob Pietrafeso. Really looking forward to it. Hold on your hats. Stay here Saturday morning, 710 KNUS. Morning, everybody, on a Saturday morning, December the 14th, coming up on Christmas, 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station, and good morning to everybody. 55 will be the high, says the 710 KNUS Weather Center. 54 on Sunday, Monday, 49 degrees. Waiting for former ambassador to Bahrain, Sam Zakhem. And then something that's really been wonderful that's happened here for the last couple of Saturdays. A book, and I'm going to pass the book over to Ron Pietrafeso, who's already here, entitled Elvis and the Colonel. And this fellow does this whole approach to Colonel Tom Parker and Elvis Presley. And in essence, cleans up the Colonel. Well, it gets into the Denver parts of Elvis's life where he meets Ron and Bob Pietrafeso and a number of others. And the stories are legion. So Ronnie was with us last week by phone call from Maine, and I had the most wonderful lunch I got invited to with a bunch of including former chiefs of ours. And it was just a wonderful lunch. And I think there's about 15 radio shows that are going to come out of that as well. But everybody sat and talked. And I talked on the phone with Bob Pietrafeso. And I said, you guys got to finish up the stories. And so they have. And so they will be here beginning next hour. We got the ambassador on the line. He's there. All right, everybody, given that the events right now in Syria, please say good morning. He's one of the best I know. He took me traveling in the Middle East with him. Please say good morning and welcome back to the show. Former ambassador to Bahrain, Sam Zakhem. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning, Peter. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing pretty good for an old guy.
Right.
It's like I just watch stuff now and I think, oh my heavens, what is going to happen next? And the world is not getting a lot of attention on the collapse of the Assad regime and the Israeli invasion. I'll just sit back and you, if you could, talk to the audience about what you think is happening.
Well, you know, there's something good in it, especially because this is a setback for Iran, which is a troublemaker in the region, Hezbollah. If the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, it's the Front for the Liberation of Sham, which is Damascus. If they prevail, they're strongly against Israel and against the Christians in Syria, and surely the sect that the Assad belonged to in Idlib. It's a minority sect of Islam, so it's a mixture of things. It's Assad, though, gave Israel peace for a long time. After his dad did some trouble with Israel.
It's been 50 years. I mean, from my reading to prepare for the show, the Israeli military on Tuesday said it carried out 480 strikes across the country in the past 2 days. And the collapse of the Assad regime And for 50 years, there's been a DMZ, a buffer zone, and now the Israelis cross it. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has hailed the collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime, and he sounds like George Herbert Walker Bush because now he's claiming it is a new and dramatic chapter for the Middle East. 480 strikes carried out by Israeli Air Force. 350 were manned aircraft strikes. They get on a list of places that were struck, Damascus, and on from there. And the rest of the strikes were in support of ground operations where the IDF has now crossed into Syria. Now, that's not getting a lot of attention in the United States. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, Assad gave them peace. There has not been any trouble making by Syria against Israel. But the reason I believe Israelis did what they did, they are scared that the opposition now, which is extremists led by ISIS, a kind of groups, that they will use especially the bad weapons in Syria against Israel. So that's, I believe, why Israel went ahead with so many strikes against Syrian positions.
So they're looking for Saddam, we know, did not have chemical weapons. Did Assad have chemical weapons?
Yes, they do have chemical weapons, and I think the Israelis concentrated mainly on that.
To try and find those weapons before. Now, the people, when I was there, the war inside of Syria, the United States was fighting the same people that Assad was fighting.
Yes.
And I look back, I mean, the Middle East is so intricate, and I don't pretend to understand it, but it's very, very intricate. So the United States and the Assad regime are fighting the same people who are trying to overthrow them. Who are these people now that CNN calls rebels? Who are they, Ambassador?
They are called in Arabic Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Front for the Liberation of Sham, which is Damascus. And I believe they are mainly extremist, terrorist kind of people led by ISIS form of leadership.
So always the Assad government has always been a parking spot for equipment, arms from Iran, if I understand that correctly.
Yes, sir.
And so what does that now do to the picture?
Well, Assad, as bad as he was with his own people, wasn't really a threat to us.
No.
And he wasn't, he gave up the hatred of Israel and gave them peace. Things may go bad in that region if the extremist ISIS group takes over and remains in power. We call them terrorists.
Former ambassador to Bahrain.
They're not. They have abandoned the extremism that they used to have, but I doubt that.
Former ambassador to Bahrain, Sam Zakhem's here. If what we have found out, and we were talking earlier with Tim Furnish, what was called Arab Spring really turned into Arab Winter, did it not?
Yes, you're right. It did.
And that was Hillary Clinton and Arab Spring.
Yes, sir.
And,
yes.
And if the collapse of the Syrian regime is a result of what? I mean, of what? The collapse comes, and there's people that believe Assad's dead, that he died on an airplane. I don't know that, but then when we saw the collapse of Saddam Hussein because of Bush and Cheney's lies, we saw the collapse of Gaddafi in Tripoli. They were replaced by governments far worse.
Here, here. Here, here. And frankly, I was no fan of George W. Bush, because his attack and the destruction of Saddam, I told him personally in the White House, Mr. President, if there's no Saddam in Iraq, we should invent one, because Saddam was the one who was able to stop the horrible Turks. And now Turkey is taking trouble all over through its sponsorship of Hezbollah and terrorist groups in Yemen and other places.
I read English Al Jazeera. I read English version of Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is claiming that, and several Arab states are accusing Israel of exploiting the instability in Syria to call it a land grab. And they say that there's a land grab taking place in Gaza. And the Arab League, which is a grouping of Arab nations, said Israel is taking advantage of the developments in the internal situation in Syria. And this is out of Egypt yesterday afternoon, to constitute a vacuum and then occupy more Syrian territories. Do you believe there's anything to that?
Well, I think there could be a truth in that, but only God knows. Things over there are so, they change so much.
So quickly.
Yeah, so very quickly. Also, only God knows what's going to happen next.
What can Donald Trump do if he says he can end these wars?
Well, I doubt that he can end those wars. I wish they would, but I'm not too optimistic about that region of the world.
How can it end? I mean, Bashar al-Assad's regime has been there since 1971. They are allies of Russia, although maybe not now. What happens?
Well, I knew his dad very well. I did not know. I knew Bashar when he was a young boy, but I have not been in touch with him. I visited his dad twice. The last time I talked with his dad was 1997, 2 years before he died. And but I don't know much about Bashar, so
he's a doctor.
Very quick.
I know he's a doctor. He's an eye doctor.
Sure, but a graduate from Germany.
Would you take a moment and explain Alawites and in the Alawi movement?
Explain what?
The Alawites, the inside of Syria, inside a lot of the Middle East are the Alawites. And I'm trying to understand them myself. Who are they?
I honestly, Peter, don't know.
Oh, it's ALAWITES, and they seem to turn up in my reading. And they're part of the Syrian revolution. And they come out of working class neighborhoods. They're much like a Hezbollah, where they come out of jails.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't know much about them, though. As I said earlier, only God knows what's going to happen next with Bashar being gone.
Oh, it'll be like Saddam being gone. Everybody's going to try and move in and be try to be good to the West, but who are they really?
They are really terrorists,
and
extremists.
Yes.
I know one thing. The Christians tend to suffer. Hafiz al-Assad had 10 advisors. 6 of them were Christian Orthodox, like the Greeks. And so does his son. Who are coming in are very anti-Christian. The Christians tend to lose a lot with the loss of Bashar.
And Saddam had, Tariq Aziz was a Christian man.
Yes, Saddam was a friend to the Christian. As you said, Tariq Aziz, his prime minister, was a Christian.
He was a Christian, yeah. And I know that I'm not defending what's taking place in Syria. I'm certainly not defending Assad, but they didn't suppress Christianity, did they?
They did not. You are so right. But you can defend where Bashar stood, but when it comes to the Christian, he was supportive.
And so now, will these people...
Now they will suffer.
Yeah.
They will suffer because ISIS is an extremist form of Islam.
I remember when one of our trips there that the United States of America was fighting the same people that Assad was fighting inside of Syria. They were fighting. We were on the same side.
Yes.
It's crazy. I can't, for the life of me, I think you could study the Middle East the rest of your life and never ever be able to understand it.
Amen to that. Amen a million times. Things change so fast, and it's so unpredictable what will happen.
Yeah, I would have thought that big deal what I would have thought, but that they would have stayed. They would have had our backing, and they were fighting against the same people that we were allegedly fighting against. But now it's gone. And
yes,
the Israelis have invaded, How are things in Lebanon? What do you hear from home?
Well, Lebanon, unfortunately, is ruled now by Hezbollah.
That's right.
I don't call them Hezbollah. I call them Hezb Shaitan, the party of the devil rather than the party of God. And they take their orders from Iran.
Yep.
And the commander of the Lebanese armed forces told me personally, Hezbollah is stronger than the Lebanese military, and they have weapons because they get all of it
Sure.
from Iran used to get it through Syria,
Yep.
Iran.
No, I understand that Lebanon is very precarious right now. Could do the same thing that just happened in Syria could happen in Lebanon.
Here,
Yeah.
Peter, allow me to say, you know that region so well.
No, I don't, but I've been there.
Yeah. And it is so sad, and things happen so fast, and as we said earlier, very unpredictable what will happen next.
And what I think, and I'll give you the final comment, what I think is interesting is the lack of attention. I mean, there's so many other things taking place in the world today, but what strikes me, and because I'm drawn to Middle Eastern politics, this is not getting attention. And
you're right. You're so right, Peter. And frankly, we give Israel $8 billion a year, and we should help the Lebanese armed forces instead. You know, Israel is probably the fourth strongest nation on earth, and the Lebanese military is so weak compared even to Hezbollah. We should help the Lebanese to
do what?
Rein in Hezbollah, and that will help Israel too.
They have to rein inside. Hezbollah has to be reined inside, and
amen.
It doesn't look like. Maybe that's the ultimate game, is to just let everything be destroyed and start again. I'm not sure, but boy, oh boy, I've been in parts of Lebanon that are now been destroyed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And what about those poor bastards in those camps? What must it be for them right now, Ambassador?
What's going to be for who? For Syria, you mean?
Yeah, for the people in the camps that we visited. And you think to yourself, how can they exist now? Where do they eat? Where do they get clean water? What do they do for medical help?
They are in an extremely bad situation. I had a dear friend, and you knew her. She couldn't buy the drugs that were prescribed for her by the doctor. They didn't have money to buy their medicine. Lebanon is in very bad shape. Needs help very badly.
Let us see now with a change in the government here in the U.S., and the regimes are changing left and right. And every time there has been a regime change in the Middle East, it always is worse than it was. And that's
amen.
No, it really is. It's historical fact.
Here. Well, you know about the region better than most of the people I know, and you said it. Things always turn out to be worse than they were.
What Bush and Cheney did will not be rectified in my grandson's lifetime.
Amen. God bless you for what you
just said, but I'll get mad. They'll get mad. Ambassador, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I know we'll talk before then, but the best to you and to your family, and thanks for doing the radio show this morning. Thank you very much.
And to you, I am honored to know you and to be on your program.
Thank you, Ambassador. All right, everybody. Good morning one more time. It is Saturday morning, 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. 55 will be the high. Wow, looks good. We're waiting for Bob Pietrafeso. Ron's here, and we can do open lines. I started the show this morning. We can do anything you want to do on open lines, but we started talking about the drones. And my daughter and I watched drones last night, for real. I mean, they're there. If you want to talk about the Middle East, whatever you would like to talk about, lines are open. 303-696-1971 with Ron and Bob Pietrafeso coming up. All right. Danny Kaplas's law firm. I'm going to do Dan's radio show with him this Tuesday. I'm going to do 2 to 4. We're going to do 2 hours together. And I've talked about what we went through with my family. I tell you what, you choose a lawyer who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. Dan's dad, we've talked about this. Dad was a cop, and has talked about his mom, talked about growing up. And Danny's believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash case histories. And Danny's believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He is my friend. I can't wait to do a show. It'll be fun. Dan Kaplas Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Danny accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. He can also represent good people from all walks of life without regard for the ability to pay. I mention this all the time, that our family, about 7-8 years ago, we had some things happen, and Dan Kaplas, at night, when everybody else's day is done, Dan would call to make sure things were done. And that stuff that's a big win for me. Hit dankaplaslaw.com, 303-770-5551, or hit Kaplas Law, C-A-P-L-A-S, kaplaslaw.com. You will get your answers. CAPLASlaw.com. It's my tune. Sunroof top, digging the scene and the gangsta beam. How many times? It is December the 14th, 2024. Lines are wide open. 303-696-1971. The Pietrafeso brothers will be with us at the top of the hour. Saturday weather, sunny and 55 degrees, 54 on Sunday, and on Monday, 49 degrees. I opened the show talking about drones, and my daughter has been seeing drones. She said, Dad, I see drones. They're running up and down. You see them, and what's that? All right. So we turned all the lights out in the house last night. Opened the windows, pulled up the shades, and decided, okay, let's watch for drones. I saw drones. I mean, for real, saw drones. Saw fast ones, saw ones that just hovered. And I know I'm not alone. And I'm hearing from a lot of folks, a lot of people in the audience. Yeah, we see drones too. And this whole New Jersey thing. And then we had a fellow call. He was a pilot. He called us in the first hour. He was wonderful about all of this. So we have that. We have whatever you want to do. So we'll go to Ken in Colorado Springs, start the hour off or start the segment off. Hey, Ken, thanks for calling the radio show, and good morning.
Good morning. This Peter?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I had the radio on. I'll turn that way down.
Please.
Yeah, Peter, I called you a couple of weeks ago, and about a book. Now, what you've just been talking about in the Middle East, I know that you have an intense interest in what's going on there, and I'm the one that recommended to you, being the voracious reader that you are, that you get the Dragon's Coffee.
I remember your call. I haven't done that, but I do remember your call. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you're not alone when you say, I don't understand. I can't understand. And I don't think we'll ever understand. And I believe, Peter, seriously, that if you take the time to read Rabbi Kahn's book, you will understand. Okay? I'm trying, personally, I've got a mission. Okay, God's got me on a mission. I'm trying to get a message to the three men that I believe God has called and chosen to shepherd Israel at this point in time. And that's President Trump, Ambassador Huckabee, and of course, Netanyahu. But, you can't just pick up the phone or send a text or it's hard to get a message to a body like that.
Oh, sure.
I believe that they need, if they haven't already, they need to read the book. And I would recommend that they contact Rabbi and consult with him.
What, for the cut to the chase, what does he say is going to happen?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got his book, and I've got a series.
Just give me a thumbnail, if you would.
Well, it's all based on the prophecy in the Bible.
Okay, tell me what it is, please.
Well, ultimately, there'll be Armageddon, and our hope at this point is that the United States will not be one of the nations that goes up against Israel at Armageddon. Armageddon's an actual place.
Yes, it is. I've been there.
Yeah. Okay. And all the nations will gather and attack Israel. And if Mr. Trump is involved, the United States won't be part of that. But that's probably way off in the future, but it could be next week. Who knows?
So what do you think it ends? How does it end?
Well, it ends with the return of the Lord.
Sure. And
there's a whole lot of action and activity and stuff that's going to happen in the meantime. And all these guys, everything from Saddam Hussein to Hitler and you name it, they're all just servants of the dragon.
Well,
you know, the names changed. We knock them off here, we knock them off there, but we don't knock off the spirit that they're subject to.
Who
that
is
they're serving?
who is that servant of the devil now, or excuse me, servant of the serpent now in the world?
Well, all of this stuff, terrorism. I mean, all that stuff that happened October the 7th, 23. You know, that was, I think I told you, he preached a sermon the Friday night before that happened. And then the next day it happened. And that's when he started writing the book. It's all prophesied. This stuff is, it's just repeating itself.
So when will this happen? I'm coming up on time. When will this happen?
Well, I'll tell you what, had you read the book, you'd understand what I'm saying.
Well, help me. I've not read the book.
Okay.
Please tell me.
No. I'm telling you, a time, times, and a half a time.
Which means?
That's 42 months, 3.5 years.
From now.
3.5 years from any time. So I'm hoping that I live long enough to see what is going to happen a time, times, and a half a time after October the 7th, 2023.
All right.
Because I'm pretty confident that something important is going to happen. Lord knows what. I don't know.
Okay. Fair enough. Good call. Thank you very much. 303-696-1971. We have open lines up until Ron and Bob Pietrafeso will be with us at the top of the hour. The drones, I mean, I'm fascinated by the drones, and we had a great explanation from a guy that was obviously knew what he was talking about the drones. Have you seen them? Have you personally seen them? I have. I saw them last night. I was just like, oh. And the New Jersey stuff, and then you see the guy outside. He's almost got a semi-auto, and he's busting caps on, and you can almost watch the tracer rounds bend. He's shooting at him. So there's that to talk about, the Middle East to talk about. 303-696-1971. So I will say this. Good morning, everyone. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. If you were trying to get in and got a busy, because we've been busy off and on all morning, you can jump in right now. 303-696-1971. Peter Boyles, 710 KNUS. Made it to a Saturday. Good morning, everyone. Saturday, December 14th, 2024. 55 will be the high. 54 mountain snow tomorrow and Monday. 49 degrees. As I said, this is rare. We have nobody on the phone. So if you've been backed up and you want to get on the show, please, right now is your moment. 303-696-1971. We have about 10, 15 minutes, and then we're going to switch over to guests. So I always hear from people, I couldn't get on, I can't get on, I can't get on. It's mathematical probability, but lines are lighting up now. Ski resorts are experiencing better snow conditions right now than they have in a long, long time. I have not yet skied, so it's going to be my holiday. I'm going to take time in the holidays to get up and go down the hill. Taking your skis and snowboards for a tune-up, or maybe even getting new gear for Christmas. The best winter sports equipment, head over to Larson Ski and Sport, located south of I-70 on Kipling. So whether you're looking to rent or buy equipment with little kids, always rent, always rent, always rent. Larson's got you covered. Jack, of course, John Larson, Paul, the people who work there are dedicated to providing you with the best skiing experience possible, and they're good. Convenience of Larson's is unbeatable. Perfect stop on your way up or down the mountain. So if you're headed up early in the morning, get off I-70 on Kipling, come down the Kipling ramp, make a left, come back underneath, and come out the other side, and you'll see a big wooden building right on your right-hand side on the west side. That's Larson Ski and Sport. Same thing coming back, get off the ramp, stay on Kipling South, make the cut, and there they are. John and the guys at Larson's, absolute experts at everything they need, or everything you need for winter sports. It's boards, just with the holidays here, people need good stuff for skiing and boarding. Stop in today. Tell them I sent you. Larson Ski and Sport, south of I-70 on Kipling, 303-423-0654, 303-423-0654. All right, let's go to the phones. We start with Mike on line one. Mike, you're on the radio show. Thank you and good morning.
Good morning, Peter. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well, man. Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to see if you had heard that clip from about Tim, the MMA guy, about calling out LeBron.
No.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it was in his pre-fight news conference, but he called out LeBron and he wanted to know what kind of, because LeBron made that comment about there ain't no party like a Diddy party. So he was calling out LeBron, wanted to know, what he knows about all this. And it's kind of weird that since that happened, LeBron's kind of stepped away from the Lakers.
My sense of this is, first of all, do you think Diddy survives in jail?
Well, like one of your callers said earlier, I think if he does, he's paying off people to protect him.
I just got done finishing this thing about Gotti, and Gotti hired the Aryan Brotherhood to protect John Gotti. Hired the Aryan Brotherhood to protect him when he was in federal penitentiary. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, and you wonder if, there's people in prison that are connected with the whole trafficking ring that want to protect him just to keep it going.
Oh, if it was just you and I sitting in this room, I would tell you a story about prison that was told to me that it's chilling. You can't imagine how tough that becomes. But now it looks like other people were involved, and don't you know? I mean, you're a smart guy. When the first guy rolls over, gets the best deal.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And there's supposed to be movies. There's supposed to be video. There's supposed to be stills. There's supposed to be, all kinds of stuff. And if Jeffrey Epstein is a lesson, what is that lesson?
Yeah, well, I'm surprised that Ghislaine Maxwell, however you say her name, is still alive.
Well, she, you ever read about her father? He drowned off the side of the yacht. And I mean, these people, I think, have been underhanded for generations.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But they look what's happened now with Andrew, with Prince Andrew. I mean, this guy, they think maybe he sold intelligence. I mean, there's just no bottom to these guys. You know, guys like me and you, we're nickels and dimes.
Well, I'm more of a penny, but yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah, no, but we are. And I was reading all this stuff last night, you know, trying to gear up for the show. And I'm reading about these parties that they would throw. But what is it about the Weinsteins and Epstein and Diddy and these guys that they can think that they can get away with it?
You know, the power influence. I think they think they have enough power and they're just too big to be touched.
I think you're right. I mean, it was what was Mick Jagger's line? Mick Jagger said, "Your laws do not pertain to me."
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, he did, you know, what is it? You've gotten away with literally everything. And I still contend, you know, Bill Clinton got away with it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, he how much older was Monica Lewinsky than his own daughter?
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, the pictures of him with those girls at Epstein Island, those girls were younger than his daughter.
And the one story that's coming that says that they raped a 13-year-old girl at one of those Diddy parties. 13. What is?
Well, it makes you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you say.
Well, I'm surprised. I mean, just you wonder what's happened with Justin Bieber. I mean, he was what 13, 14 whenever he was at those parties.
Bingo. He comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And now he's kind of laying low like Johnson's wax. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
This guy's not popping up. And if somebody rolls, one person rolls and really talks, watch out.
Yeah.
Watch out.
But you know, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and you know, take them for a grain of sand. But like I can't remember the guy's first name, but Bennington, the lead singer for Linkin Park, they said he was working on either a documentary or something about child sex trafficking in Hollywood, and he dies. And there's been a few other names. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but you know, it's not that far-fetched whenever you think the power and influence these people have.
When is our last question? When is the last time you were really, really shocked? Me neither.
Yeah.
I mean, when is the last time that you? I mean, I'm not surprised or offended, but shocked. When was the last time you were really shocked?
I think the last time was probably whenever I read about Lucille Ball's life in her early years, but that's years and years ago.
She was a Trotskyist, and she was a player.
Yep.
You take care of yourself. This is a wonderful call, and it takes us up to time. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. On the other side, Ron and Bob Pietrafeso in studio. This starts off with his book, Elvis and the General. And if you were listening last week with Ron and now bringing Bob into it, then it's just good talk radio. And if we're not careful, it's all going to get away. And the stuff needs chronicled. And I was at a lunch. I got invited to a lunch with a bunch of old retired cops. And I thought to myself, there should be cameras on these walls and have these men speak. And there's a line from Jerry Jeff Walker, and he did a song. There's a tune called like Desperados Waiting for a Train, and it's one of my favorites. And Jeff sings, actually, it's about another guy's grandfather. Or another guy was dating the guy's grandmother. And he said, these are heroes of our country. Why are they all dressed up like these old men? And that's what I walked away with. So Ron and Bobby Pietrafeso in studio. Hold on your hats. Great talk radio straight ahead. It's a Saturday. Now I get to say good afternoon. No, I don't. I get another hour before I say good afternoon. Sunny and 55, 54 tomorrow, Monday, 49 degrees. You ready? Hit the button. Stand by. It's all on me. And it's 12 o'clock, and good afternoon, everyone, for the first time on a Saturday. And it is going to be this next hour of talk radio, Saturday, December the 14th, 2024. Tomorrow's Sunday, be 54, and it's going to be snowing in the mountains. Our phone number, 303-696-1971. Thank you all for being here. So let me take you back in time just a little bit. I received a book that Ron Pietrafeso is sitting and reading right now, and it's entitled Elvis and the General. And it is I don't want to say an expose, but it is it's letting the colonel off the hook. And when people write books about Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker generally comes up on the short end, up to and including the movie that was done where Tom Hanks played Tom Parker. Well, in the middle of all of this plays two remarkable longtime friends, Ron and Bobby Pietrafeso. And of all the groups of people that Elvis helped, I think these two may be the last two guys that are standing. So last week, Ronnie came on. He was in Maine. He was on the phone. He did about 20 minutes, and the whole board lit up. I mean, everybody loved what was being said, stories about Elvis. And so I said it was only fair without Bob Pietrafeso. And I go back with these guys so many years and through so many adventures. And then was it Thursday that we did it, that you invited me to lunch? Wednesday. So I'm putting the show together. And I'm talking to Ron, and he said, "What are you doing for lunch?" And nothing. And he said, "We're having a lunch at the Stockyards." Was it the Stockyards Saloon, or what's it called?
That's it. Yeah, right there behind the National Western Stock Show.
I hadn't been there in 300 years because back in the nightmare years, we would go there a lot. And so I went to this lunch. Who all was at that lunch?
Oh, my goodness. Chief Harry Zavaris was there, Bobby Simmons, Larry Subia, Dave McReynolds, Marshall Fogel, who had been with the DA's office and a private attorney for years, Gary Graham, one of the division chiefs, Tom Kennedy, Jerry Kennedy's son, and also Jim Welton, who was with the Aurora PD and actually took Bob Cantwell's place as the head of the state prison system when Bob retired.
I'm telling you, Bob, if I'd have had cameras on the wall. I mean,
good thing you didn't.
There is a good thing I didn't too, but stories that were told. And I said to Zavaris, I said, "Would you do the show?" And he said, yes. So I got a couple of okays from some of the guys. Yeah, I'll do the show, and we'll come in, sit and do one-on-ones. But that was a time. Is that a good place to start? That was a time when all of this comes together. You were a Jeffco guy, right, Bob? Before
that's right.
You pull that microphone just down a little bit in front of you. There we go. You came on the job at Jeffco what year?
Early 70s.
And then, Ronnie, you came on Denver what year?
1967.
Who was chief?
Art Dill was chief when I first got there. And then eventually the chief that I worked the most with was Art Dill, his brother.
Yeah, I have wonderful Arthur Dill stories. Loved Arthur Dill. He would come. I was doing 8 to midnight at Cahow, and we were in the old Petroleum Club building, and John Bailey was our producer, and the hotline would ring, and they say, "Chief's outside," and he would come up and watch the radio show at night, and we'd have a few adult beverages, and we would do radio together. And he was just a remarkable, remarkable guy. Who was the sheriff when you came on the job?
Sheriff Bray, Harold Bray.
Oh, man, those are names.
Oh, yeah.
Great names. So,
You know, Peter, not to interrupt you, but I started at Jeffco.
Right.
That's where I originally
I
started.
didn't know that.
Yeah, and Harold was the sheriff then, and I did 3 years out there, and then I moved to Denver.
Ron, when you started, you were too young to go on the road, though, right?
Yeah, they started me out in the Identification Bureau, sent me to the FBI fingerprint school, and I worked down the ID Bureau classifying fingerprints until I was of age to go out on the road.
out.
Yeah.
Now, the question obviously, is, and I listened to the KOA thing, I thought it was very good. Which one of you two met Elvis first?
I did. Ron did.
Yeah.
Where did you meet Elvis Presley?
It would have been 1976, and we were working off-duty jobs under the direction of Captain Jerry Kennedy at the time. He was a captain, and he said, "Hey, we got Elvis Presley coming to town, and he spends an extra 2 or 3 days at the end of his long tours, and Denver happened to be at the end of his tour. So he said, we're going to have to secure the hotel for 3 days. He's going to be here. So plan on bringing extra clothes, and you'll be there for around the clock." And that was at the old Radisson where the Playboy Club was at.
Were you part of that?
No, not yet. I hadn't met him yet.
Okay. So it's you. Who were the guys working?
Oh, man. Bob Cantwell,
Yeah.
Jerry Frazzini.
All right.
Who else was there? I'm trying to remember. We were around
How
the clock.
tough, by the way, was Jerry Frazzini?
One of the toughest guys
Jesus.
I'd ever. I got to tell a quick story, and your audience will like this. One of the toughest guys, but the most honest and good policeman. We arrested a guy one night who was known to want to fight all the time, and this was a tough narcotics peddler, tough guy. And we brought him up into the old police building there at 13th and Champa. And he kept saying, you take these cuffs off me. You take these cuffs off of me. Take that gun off, and I'll take any one of you on. And the next thing I look over, and Jerry's taking his gun off, took his badge out, and took the handcuffs off, went into one of the interrogation rooms, closed the door, and that was the end of that.
Oh, there were two guys. The other guy I knew was Joe Garcia.
Tough guy, too.
Yeah, he was.
Joe Garcia, and those guys were tough cops.
But you know what, Peter? We talk about this all the time. Nobody ever got complained on because the guys we were dealing with were criminals, and they knew what the game was all about. If they had a knock and do, they got it, and they didn't say anything because the next time they may have give it to you. So it was just a different time.
So you're there with Elvis for 3 days.
Yes.
And there's all these stories that I've heard both of you tell, and books have been written about. Elvis liked cops.
Oh, I've said many times that if he wasn't in law enforcement, if he wasn't in the entertainment business, he'd have been in law enforcement somewhere.
He'd have been a cop.
Yeah.
So Jerry says, we got to be very careful. They got to seal off the elevators. Somebody's got to be by the elevators 24 hours a day. Nobody can get off on this floor. And, news gets out and people figured out he was there. And we had people coming up the elevator and trying to get off. But that after his concert, which was the first night we were there, the next morning when he got up and came out, he brought out this case of badges that he was collecting from every city that he had been doing a concert in. And he also brought out his small portion of his gun collection that he traveled with. And he was so proud of it. And I've got pictures of that I'm going to send to you, so you'll have them for your collection, of him showing off his guns and his badges, and Joe Esposito, who I became really good friends with over the years. In fact, I was in his wedding. Joe was Elvis's road manager, and Joe came to me and he said, "Hey, he's showing you all these badges because he's trying to give you a hint that he'd like to have a badge from Denver." So I went to the captain and I told him what Joe had said. And he said, "Well, let me talk to the chief," which would have been Chief Dill. And he went, got a badge. And at that time, we had these honorary lieutenant's badges. It was an actual lieutenant's badge, but it said honorary on it. And they gave it to dignitaries. So Jerry comes back with one, and we present it to Elvis, and he looked, "Oh, thank you, guys." And I later said to Joe, "You don't seem very happy about that." And he said, "Well, I got to be honest with you. It says honorary."
Yeah.
That's he wants a real one. I went back to Jerry. I said, "Hey, Jerry, he'd like a real one." He goes, "Well, that's never happened that I know of in Denver's history." He said, "I'll go ask the chief, but I think it's going to be no." And he went and talked to Art, and like you said earlier, Art was a different kind of guy. He was a great leader, and he knew what Elvis had done in the past for his cheering on policemen all across the country. So he said to Jerry, "Yeah, let's give him one." So we got a regular lieutenant's badge and gave it to him. And I'm going to jump ahead. Several months later, or a year later, when he was here on a snowmobile trip, he said to us, he goes, he said, "I really like that lieutenant's badge, but do you think I can get a captain's badge?" And anyway, he ended up with a captain's badge too. So it was a fun 3 days. And people ask me all the time, "How did you become so close with Elvis? How were you able to travel and do all this stuff?" And I said, it was fate. I said, who knew that we'd be the last city on his tour that year, and that he was going to spend 3 days? Because in all the other cities, and when I actually traveled with him on tour a couple of times, you'd fly into a city, you'd do a concert, you get on the airplane that night, go to the next city, do the concert, get on the plane that night. You spend very little time. So for him to spend 3 days here was fate. And that's how the whole thing worked out for us.
Now, Bob's story, and I was under the impression, and I don't know where, maybe because you and I were talking one day, what was the truck that you got? How did you get the truck? And the story of the truck. And
I'm going to tell you from the beginning.
Okay. I'm going to move that to you.
I get a call at the office. And my secretary says to me, "Bobby," she said, "there's a guy on the phone says he's Elvis." I said, okay. So I take the phone call, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just getting ready to go. It's getting close to quitting time." And he said, "Well, if you're not busy tonight," he said, "can you stop by the motel?"
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I can do that.
Where were they staying?
Well, at that time, do you remember the Stofers?
No. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. On 32nd in Quebec.
Actually, that's right.
Right on the corner.
Yeah.
That's right. That's where he was staying then. And so I hang up the phone, and my secretary, Wendy, God bless her, she says, "Who was that?" I said, "Wendy, that was Elvis." And she freaked. She was such an Elvis fan. She said, "Oh my God, I talked to Elvis. Oh, I can't believe it." So anyway, I left. I headed over there. When I got there, Chief Dill and his wife were just leaving. Wow. And Elvis was getting ready. He had his bathrobe on. He was getting ready to go pay his respects to the Kennedy family because he was here.
Because Jerry Kennedy's brother had passed.
Gene, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was going to go. And with Elvis, we pretty much had to take him out at nighttime because during the day, I mean, it's you can't go anywhere with him for obvious reasons. So I get there, they're leaving. He hugs me. He said, "Oh man, it's so good to see you. How are you?" And this and that. And then he says, and he was famous for this. He said, I got a new, as pretty much everybody knows, he was quite the accomplished martial artist. Okay.
Mhm.
So he said, I got to show you this new move. You can use it out on the street. He says, hey, Red, come over here.
And that's Red West.
Red West.
Yeah.
And I look at Red, and Red's got this look on his face like, oh, gee, here we go again. You know.
Yeah.
So he comes over, and I swear to you, he said, now watch this. He said, he goes, I'll bet, Peter, in 4 seconds, he delivered probably 4 punches and had Red on his back on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was amazing. So after that, you know, he had 2 adjoining rooms, and we were watching a football game in one room. Ron showed up there pretty soon, and Elvis comes in, and he says, hey, Ron, come in this other room for a minute. I got to talk to you about something. Ron, why don't you pick it up and let him know what transpired after you guys went into that other room until the time you came back?
Well, earlier in the day, he asked me, this was several months, or no, not even several months, a few weeks after he had bought a lot of us cars, and we can get into that night, but it was a couple of weeks after that. And he said to me, hey, you know, what about your brother? We've never done anything for your brother. Do you have any idea does he want a Cadillac? And I said, you know, Elvis, to tell you the truth, my brother's not a Cadillac guy. I said, but I know for a fact that he's been looking at this Dodge pickup truck on Colorado Boulevard it's in the window of the Dodge dealer, and he's been oohing and ahhing over it. He said, do you know anybody at that Dodge store? And I said, no, but I know the guy at the Cadillac store that knows the people at the Dodge store. And he said, get it done, get it handled, get it bought. So I called, got the Dodge truck bought, brought it down earlier in that day, parked it in the parking lot of the hotel, and then take it from there.
So he's all ready to go now to go visit the Kennedy family. So I tell Ron, I said, Ron, I got to go. I got an early day tomorrow. He said, well, just hang around for a little while. He said, help me drive these guys over to the Kennedy house. He said, and then you can just go home from there. I said, yeah, okay. So we knew that there was several people out in the lobby. They had heard that he was there, and they were wanting to get a glimpse of him, you know. So we decided, I think it was Ron's idea. He said, let's take him down the fire escape. So we did. We went out the back entrance, went down the fire escape, and we're walking through the parking lot. And, oh, shoot, Ron, it had to be, what, 10 o'clock back then?
Oh, yeah, easy.
And he stops, and we're under this light in the parking lot, and here's this truck sitting there. And he says, boy, that's a pretty truck, isn't it? I said, that thing's gorgeous. He puts his arm around my shoulder, has the keys in his hand, shakes them in my face. He said, well, it's yours.
Wow.
I said, oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So one of the guys had a flashlight. He grabs the flashlight. And if you remember, us old guys remember back in the day, when you bought a vehicle, they put your name and address on the temporary
That's right.
Temporary permit.
On the honeymoon tag.
Yeah,
That's
exactly,
right.
yeah.
He
They call
takes
them
me around
honeymoons,
the back, shines the flashlight on the temporary
And
permit,
there you are.
and there's my name and address. I tell you, all these guys were laughing because they all knew what was going on. I was the only one that didn't know. I turned around, I hugged him. He was laughing. He said, I love you, man. You know, it was just amazing. That's the kind of guy he was.
It was, and I think you and I actually one time out where you're working now, we stood around and you told me about that truck. Was it a power wagon?
Yeah. It was a Dodge Power Wagon. And back then, that was the truck to own, you know. But, and believe it or not, it was so much money. I couldn't afford to buy one. I was making a policeman's wages back then. We didn't make a lot of money. And to tell you the truth, you know how much it was with tax and everything?
No.
$8,700.
That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah, it's not even a down payment now.
No, that's true too.
But back then, I couldn't afford that. You know?
Your car was they went to the Cadillac dealer
Yeah.
for you.
Yes. Yeah. We were up in Vail, snowmobiling, and we had rented a large house up there to stay in. It had 4, 5, 6 bedrooms in it. And Jerry Kennedy and Elvis were up in Elvis's room, and Jerry yelled down. He said, "Hey, Ron, come up here." And I went up the stairs to the bedroom, and he said, "Can you believe what just happened?" And I said, "What just happened?" He said, "Elvis just bought me a new Lincoln." I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No." He said, "We got to go pick one out tonight, drive down to Denver." And I said, I said, "Elvis, that is really nice of you." And he looked at me and he said, "You want one?" And I said, "Well, to be honest with you," and people laugh when I tell them this story. I said, "Be honest with you, I'd rather have a Cadillac." Jerry told me later, he said, "Man, that was unbelievable that you said that." And he said, "Well, do you know a Cadillac dealer?" I said, "Yeah, I do. I sure do." He said, "Well, get him on the phone." He said, let's head for Denver. And we went to the Cadillac, or the, I'm
See, and
sorry,
I
we
always
went
thought
to,
it was Rick and Bob, but it wasn't.
no,
was
no,
it?
it was Jack Kent
Jack
Cadillac.
Kent,
Yeah.
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 So we went to the Lincoln dealership first, and Jerry picked out his. I'll still remember remember those Lincolns, and it was called a Bill Blass
Oh, of course.
special.
BLASS.
Yeah.
The designer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was on the showroom floor, and Jerry picked it out,
Believe this.
and we're sitting there, and they're
And
doing.
Jerry picked the car out.
Oh yeah. We're sitting there doing paperwork, and Elvis said to Jerry, he said, "Hey," he said, "what's that doctor's name that
Starkey, right?
prescribed that lotion for my rash that I got while we were in Vail?" He got a rash on his neck from snowmobiling, and he needed something, and we called Dr. Starkey, who was a police surgeon.
He was the Denver.
Yeah. And Starkey sent up a prescription to Vail, and he used it on this rash, and it cured it. And so we're sitting there doing paperwork on Jerry's car, and he said, what was that doctor's name? Jerry said, Gerald Starkey. And he said, "You think he'd like one of these Lincolns?" Well, Dr. Starkey wasn't even there. And what are you going to say when somebody said? Jerry said, "Well,
No.
Yeah, right.
No.
Jerry said, "Yeah, I'm sure he would." He goes, "Well, pick one out for him." So Jerry picked out another Lincoln that was on the showroom and did paperwork on that. And he said, "Okay, Ron." He said, "We got to head to the Cadillac store." I said, "All right." So we headed over to Jack Kent. I'd called him ahead of time, told him we were coming. So we get in there and walk in the showroom, and the general manager, Skeet Antonio, was the general manager. And he met us there. And of course, we have the whole entourage. Elvis and Linda Thompson was there, and all the Memphis Mafia guys, Red West and Sonny West, and Joe Esposito. Joe was there, and the whole group was there. And so we go into the Cadillac store, and they're closed by now. This was about 9 or 9:30 at night. And he said, "All right, Ron, you want to pick one out?" So there was a beautiful, beautiful light blue Cadillac Eldorado sitting on the showroom floor.
White vinyl top.
With a white vinyl top. I said, "That's it right there."
Oh.
He said, "Okay." And then he looks at Joe. He said, "Hey, Joe, pick one out for your girlfriend, Shirley."
Yeah.
"Oh, wow. Red, pick one out for your wife." "Oh,
wow.
Sonny, pick one out for your wife."
I never knew any of this.
Oh. So anyway, he ended up buying 12 cars that night.
Wow. Can you imagine?
The 2 Cadillacs and the 2 Lincolns and 10 Cadillacs.
Can you imagine?
And
what was the ticket, you think?
It was,
Oh,
I
my
know.
God.
I know.
Ron knows.
Yeah. It, today, one of those Cadillacs would probably be almost what those cost that night.
Sure.
He wrote a check to Jack Kent Cadillac, and there's a copy that's going around on the internet. I want to say it was, he wrote one check for all the Cadillacs, and it was like $117,000 for all of them.
That's a ton of money. It's
Back
a ton of money.
then.
Now
Yeah.
it's a ton of money.
That was 1976.
So what is it? $800,000.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Did you drive it home that night?
drove it home?
You drove the power wagon home?
Absolutely.
Quick questions, and then we got a break. What did your wives say when you guys pulled up?
Well, actually, like everybody said, this is unbelievable. I mean, were you expecting it? And of course, no, we weren't expecting it. But, and I told you this all the time, Peter. I said it last weekend. This guy was the most generous person that I'd ever been around. And we get time, I'll tell you some stories of other things he did in Memphis and in LA, and that I was there and witnessed. He was just, his philosophy was that he came from such a poor beginning. I mean, if you go back and look at the history books of where he grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, it was a slum. It was a slum. And for him, it was, I've been so blessed. And he said that over and over. I've been so blessed that me doing these things makes me feel good.
And Ron said last week, I believe, on your show, he was the kind of guy, when he wanted something, he wanted it now. And I think you mentioned that one about the Black Diamond.
Yes,
last
we
weekend,
told that story.
And that's the way it was with the cars. These dealerships were closed.
I got 15, 20 mails on the Black Diamond story, the Bob Court story, because Courts had told so many other people that story. Let me do this. These are the shows that make it worthwhile. Ron and Bob Pietrafeso in studio. We have to take a turnaround on Peter Boyles, of course. 710 KNUS, 55 will be the high, 54 tomorrow. Stay right here. Good afternoon, everybody. 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station. And this has happened to me many, many times. What is on air should be off air. What is off air should be on air. And then I go out and look for another job. December the 14th. Good afternoon, everyone. 2020 with Ron and Bob Pietrafeso. 55 the high, 54 tomorrow. And talk to you about our friends at the Water Pros. Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. We have this in our home, and it removes forever chemicals and microplastics and hard water. The first thing you should do, and again, for a whole water softener and point of use reverse osmosis drinking water systems, which really sounds like something, but it really fully installed will make such a difference in your family's health. Start the process with go-to-waterpros.net and sign up for your free in-home consultation. They come to your home, they test your water, they answer all of your questions and concerns about your water. I've trusted these guys, and they are the best. You will as well. Water Pros, family-owned, family-operated, veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you with the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. Go to waterpros.net today. Request your free water test. Take them up on it. They do it for free, show you the results for free. You make your decisions. 303-862-5554. It's 303-862-5554. 303-864. And tell them Peter Boyles sent you. One thing I want to do with Bob Pietrafeso is I want to thank the guys that let you off work today. I mean, because this was hard. Saturday's a busy day.
Yes.
Take a chance or take an opportunity. Thank the guys if you would.
Dave Galbraith,
Yeah.
Corey Shaw,
Sure.
the vice president of operations, and Whitney Holtz, the owner and president of Windish RV.
Yep.
We have 4 stores now. I work at the one in Lakewood, and I just want to thank all of them for letting me off today on a Saturday to come down here and take part in this.
Thank you guys, because it made the morning. We were at the point where we're talking off air about there's a movie now about the murder of Alan Berg, and then there's a Netflix thing on the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. I'm going to do Dan Caplis's show next Tuesday for 2 hours, and I'm sure a lot of that will be there. One of the things I know, Ronnie, that's always gutted you was what people say about Elvis, or what this book that you have in front of you, or what other people said about Elvis. How do you defend against that?
Well, the only way I can defend against it is to tell what I know personally.
Yeah.
Did he have a drug problem? He had a doctor prescribed drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very common in the entertainment business. You can talk to other people. These doctors are known as, I use the word.
He had 2 doctors.
He had 2. They were whore doctors, they called them, because they did it for money. One of them they're both dead. The last one just died a couple of years ago, but the first one was.
Did you know?
I knew them both.
Did you?
Dr. Nikopoulos was from Memphis. He was a doctor in Memphis, where Elvis obviously resided, and he bought Dr. Nikopoulos a house. The other one was a guy, and I thought I'd never remember his name, but I did. It's Elias Ghanem. He was an Arab doctor in Las Vegas, and not all, I shouldn't say that. A lot of the stars in Vegas used him because he'd give them whatever they wanted. He wore all kinds of costume gold jewelry around his neck, diamond rings, and they gave these 2 doctors supplied Elvis with uppers and downers, and I think even from time to time maybe a narcotic if what he wanted, because they give him whatever he wanted because he would pay for it.
And you said, and I've read that he had a PDF. The physician's guide. He knew it.
He knew it inside and out.
Yeah.
So it all started from, and I got most of my education about this from Joe Esposito, who had been with him from the time they were in the Army together. Elvis had a hard time sleeping at night. And for lots of reasons, one that he and I had a personal conversation about while we were in Vail one night. I said to him, why do you have such a hard time, going to bed? And he said, when I was growing up in Tupelo, he said it was an awful area. He said, and there were gunshots and knife fights. And in the middle of the night, he said, my mother would always say, you have to stay in the house. You can't go out the door. He said, and I was scared to death growing up. And it almost all was happening at night. So he said, I just have trouble. So they decided to prescribe barbiturates, sleeping pills, for him strong sleeping pills. And they soon realized that he would take these sleeping pills at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to go to bed. And then when he got up in the morning to go do a concert, he was foggy and still under partial care of the barbiturates and could have had a hard time waking up. So they said, we'll fix that. We'll give him some amphetamines to wake him up. So they give him the amphetamines and wham, he'd be lively. There. So it was down at night, up in the morning, down at night, up in the morning. And it became a terrible habit. I mean, a terrible, terrible habit. And I hate these two doctors and I'm sure there are a lot of other people that were under their care that probably happened the same way, but that's how this whole thing started.
Well, he did it because he trusted them. He believed in them.
Well, he had no choice at that point because they were the ones that were giving him the addiction.
Did either of you know Priscilla?
Oh yeah, really well.
Talk about her.
Oh, go ahead, Ron. I want to tell a story about her Jeep, though. Okay. But go ahead.
Priscilla, when we started being really around Elvis the most, they were having some serious problems. And that was just about the time they were ready to get a divorce, 1976, 77, right in there, 75. But what a class person. I mean, just a really class person. And she loved Elvis. There was absolutely no question that she loved Elvis. And his lifestyle, being gone as much as he was, and the crowd in which he associated with wasn't conducive to married life. That's simply the way it happened. And she wasn't going to deal with it anymore. And it broke his heart, but it happened. But just a good person.
The Jeep story.
Yeah. Well, let me start it first.
Right. Okay, go ahead.
I had my brother working for me when I was the general manager at Osborne Jeep. And I get a call one day from Joe Esposito again. And he said, hey, Priscilla needs your number. She was talking about wanting a tricked out Jeep. And I told her you were running a Jeep store in Denver and she needs to call you. So she called me on the phone and she said, hey, Ron, my boyfriend and I would like a Jeep, but we really want one tricked out. And I said, hey, listen, my brother's here working for me. And if anybody could trick out a Jeep, he could do it.
Bobby.
So I said, I'll call you when he has it done. So,
well, when Ron took over the store, the previous general manager had ordered all these CJs. Okay, you got to remember this was back in
CJ5. Right?
Well, yeah, these were CJ6s.
Okay,
this was the mid '80s. Okay,
right.
And this previous general manager ordered all these plain Jane little Jeeps, and they were all sitting on the fence back there. Nobody was even looking at them. So I went to Ron one day and I said, you know what? Let me take one of these Jeeps and fix it up and let's see what so I took one. He agreed, and I took one. I put some nice big tires and wheels on it, a really monster stereo system. I had a guy come in and actually hand paint some pinstriping on it. And we put it on the showroom floor. And man, that thing disappeared in a heartbeat. We made a ton of money off of it. So that's how that started. So I'd take one at a time and fix them up. And so Joe Esposito told Priscilla, about that. And so that's when they got a hold of Ron, and we fixed up the Jeep. He's got a picture he wants you to look at there.
Oh, man. Getting a little smooch.
So I fixed up this Jeep for her. Yeah. It was a black. She said, the only thing I require is that it's black on black on black.
Black on black and black.
Yeah. So I took a black Jeep, fixed it all up. Boy, it was nice too. And she flew out, her and what was the guy's name that she was with at the time?
The Italian
guy? The Italian guy.
Oh.
I'll think of it in a minute.
Anyway, they flew out. Marco Garibaldi.
There you go.
They flew out, and we had somebody pick them up at the airport and brought them out to the store, and she just fell in love with this Jeep. They drove it back to LA, and she sent me a copy of the book that she wrote, Elvis and Me.
Yeah.
And she wrote in there, Bobby, I love my Jeep. The sound system in there is better than the one in my Jag.
Wow.
Love, Priscilla. It was.
I got to tell you a funny story, Peter, about that. So when she came to pick up the Jeep that night, it was late at night, and they weren't leaving until the next morning. And so I was going to take her to a restaurant, her and Marco, for dinner. And we were driving, and I thought, I'm going to surprise my mother, and I'm going to bring Priscilla to my mother and dad's house. So I asked her if it was her. Oh, yes, of course. So we drive to my mom and dad's house, and they weren't home.
Oh.
And so we go in, and she said, can I use the restroom? And I said, absolutely. There it is right there. The next day, my mother yelled and screamed at me so loud, you allowed her to go in the bathroom? Was it dirty in there? My mother's house, you could eat off the floor. And she was worried because Priscilla was in her bathroom.
I need to sell something. We come back, and now the sadness that's befallen this next generation. Ron and Bob Pietrafeso, I love no man dearly. Stay here, 710 KNUS. Good afternoon, everyone. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station, December the 14th, 55 the high and 54 tomorrow. Ron and Bob Pietrafeso are here. We got about 3 minutes left. And what triggered all of these interviews is a book entitled Elvis and the General. I gave my copy of the book to Ron and to Bob. You've been leafing through the book, and you'd like to make at least a critique of it, what you've read so far.
Well, I mean, obviously, this guy worked with the colonel for years and years, and I'm sure the majority of this is all correct. However, just looking through it for a couple of seconds here, I noticed a couple of things that, you know, he talks about the incident we just talked about, the night of the Cadillacs. And I mean, if you're going to write this, then he could have called us, or he could have really, if he really did his research. I mean, he says that there were 4 Lincolns bought. There were only 2. He said it was a total of $70,000. It was a lot more than that. And there was a lot more Cadillacs bought. And then it's amazing because he talks about how the stories about Elvis and him not getting along, the colonel and him, were kind of fabricated. But in his book, he said that he says on page 303, on August 18th, the colonel decided to take his communication problem with Elvis to Vernon. He obviously had a communication problem with Elvis because Elvis wasn't speaking to him anymore. And I was there when Elvis and his father were talking about how the colonel didn't want to change their original agreement. And that's how the movie did portray that pretty well.
That movie where they have that moment.
Yeah, he portrayed that. Elvis and the colonel in the last were not getting along. And in fact, the times I traveled with Elvis, the colonel wouldn't even stay on the same floor or in the same hotel we did because they were not speaking. So whatever this guy says, the colonel and Elvis ended in very bad relationship.
And he came to the funeral. And what was your one memory of the funeral? Both of you guys.
The amazing people that showed up, that and I think I mentioned this last week. We were standing, were asked if we would stand by the coffin. It was laying in wait in the living room, and we stood there for 3 days, 2.5 days, with the casket while the people, and it was only dignitaries and show people that showed up. But James Brown came in.
You told me that.
And he got over to the casket. It was an open casket. And he got down, he put his hands on Elvis's hands, and he broke down crying and fell to his knees on the floor. He was so touched by the fact Elvis was dead. And I'll never forget that.
Quick comment.
I just want to take it real quick. Yes. When it was all over with at Graceland and we were leaving to go to the cemetery, you saw, I'm sure you've seen all the Cadillacs. And
Sure.
I was sitting shotgun in the Cadillac right behind the hearse. As we started to leave, now everybody has seen Graceland and the big, huge trees next to it. The weather was beautiful. There was no wind, no rain, nothing. But as we started to leave, just as the hearse passed underneath this tree, this huge branch fell to the ground. It was like just bidding farewell.
I love both of these guys, Bob and Ron Pietrafeso.
Peter, you're the best.
Merry Christmas
Thank you,
to you
Peter.
guys. And all's well. We're out. Thanks.